Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Konoha. Travel through Ninja World and open treasure chests. Chapter 81. I'm not from Kurigakure village. Are these guys all crazy? Yu originally wanted to defend himself, but these Keigai clan members couldn't help but be cruel. To be precise, they didn't care at all whether the people in front of them were Kurigakure village ninjas. In their eyes, as long as they were red-eyed, even if they are human beings, they can be killed. Under this almost crazy killing thought, the attacks of several Keigai clan members were completely lifeless, and all their moves were aimed at the vital points. Although they were desperate, Yu was still in his prime, so he was not willing to trade his life with these short-lived ghosts. After parrying for a few times, he was ready to jump out of the battle circle and run away. A bone blade suddenly appeared in front of him without any struggle. Even though he made evasive movements in time, Yu still felt a chill in front of him. The bone blade swept across his forehead, and several hairs were cut off. Kimimaro, kill him. The person who suddenly blocked Yu's path was Kimimaro. Hearing the cry of another Keigai tribesman, Kimimaro subconsciously responded and rushed over with his bone blade. Moon step. Yu stepped hard on the ground with his soles, and the whole person stood up like a bird. He stepped twice in midair and appeared 6 or 7 meters high in midair. This distance was not enough even if he stretched out the bone spurs. Upon seeing this, the two Wei clan members immediately stretched out their hands and pointed their fingers at Yu. The corpse bone veins penetrate the bullet with 10 fingers. Whizzing. Amidst the sound of breaking wind, white bones shot out from the fingertips of the Keigai tribesmen, like bullets coming out of the barrel. Can I still have fun? Unable to explain, he was stopped even when running away. Yu was also filled with anger. Soda Shirayuki immediately took out his sheath and planned to confront this group of lingering Keigai tribesmen. At this moment, a voice that sounded familiar suddenly sounded. Art fire escape ho fireball. With a bang, a huge fireball hit from the side, sweeping up the finger-piercing bullets all over the sky. At the same time, Uchiha Shisui's figure appeared in front of Yu, holding a smoke bomb in his hand. On the ground, a burst of smoke suddenly rose, covering the figures of several people. Shisui-sensei, stop talking and get out of here first. Shisui grabbed Yu's wrist, turned his head and saw Kimimaro, was stunned for a moment, then grabbed Kimimaro's arm with his other hand, and left here with a teleportation technique. In the hotel where the Konohagakure Chunin examination team stayed. It's too late, but the lights in this hotel were brightly lit. Whether it was the teams from Konoha village, Sunagakure village or Iwagakure village, they were completely sleepless at this moment. Several leading teachers gathered together to discuss countermeasures. Kurigakure village is currently in turmoil. Although the Kurigakure village ninjas guarding the door are very tough and forbid them to go out, those who can serve as teachers for various countries are without exception elite Junin from several countries. Just by hearing and seeing with the pictures and some simple speculations, we can roughly judge what happened in Kurigakure village. If at other times, there would have been civil strife in Kurigakure village, the other major countries would have wished for it to become more chaotic, but now. At this critical moment when genin from all over the world gathered together, a sudden outbreak of turmoil on this scale made people think twice. Nara Shikaku, the burning release Hayakura of Sunagakure village, and several Junin from Earth Country and Kawa Country frowned. And in a room where the Konoha team lived. Pong. With a soft sound, Uchiha Shisui appeared in the room with Yu and Kimimaro. Uchiha Izumi and Azuki Yuyan, who were restless, immediately turned their heads and looked over, with relieved expressions on their faces. Shisui-sensei, Mr. Yu, you are back, are you okay? Shisui shook his head and then looked at Yu. Yu, when did you run outside? There was such a big fuss outside. Do you know what will happen if you are caught by the ninjas of Kurigakure village? I'm sorry, Teacher Shisui. I was going for a walk after dinner and sat casually near the entrance of the village for a while. I didn't expect to encounter such a thing. Yu scratched his head. The hotel where various countries stayed was not far from the entrance of Kurigakure village, and Shisui also found him there. So after hearing this explanation, although Shisui was still a little doubtful, he still sighed and said, anyway, fortunately, I brought you back in time, otherwise once you get involved in their battle, things will become very troublesome. I didn't expect that civil strife would break out in Kurigakure village at this time. The voice stopped abruptly. Shisui looked at Kimimaro, and his eyes especially stayed on the 2 red dots between his eyebrows for a few seconds, but looking at the smooth gray-white hair, he was a little unsure. Hey, which ninja village are you from? Child. Did Shisui just think that Kimimaro was a child from other ninja villages who came to take the Chunin exam, so he brought him back with him? Kimimaro looked at Shisui and everyone in the room warily, without saying a word. Bai Mingyu hesitated for a moment, then stood up and said, well, Teacher Shisui, he is actually a descendant of the Kagaya clan. What? After the words fell, Shisui, Izumi, and Azuki Shion all looked over, staring intently at Kimimaro. Kimimaro felt a little uncomfortable and subconsciously took a small step back, silently removing his sleeves from his sleeves. He pulled out the bone blade and said, are you also from Hidden Mist Village? No. Shisui shook his head and took a step forward calmly, blocking all Kimimaro's attack routes. Unexpectedly, after Kimimaro heard the answer, he immediately put away the bone blade and bowed politely. Sorry, I admitted my mistake. What? Izumi poked his head out to look at Kimimaro, covered his mouth and said with a smile, why do I feel that this little guy looks silly and quite cute? Brat. Bai Mingyuxin said that you are not a few years older than others, and using this title seems like an adult judging a child. Kimimaro didn't say anything. He looked up and looked around blankly, as if trying to figure out where to leave the room. Shisui frowned slightly, looking at the 2 red dots between Kimimaro's eyebrows, and then thinking about what he saw at the entrance of the village just now. He roughly judged which side was fighting Kurigakure village, but listening to the commotion outside there were waves of earth-shattering movements, and it was hard to just drive Kimimaro out. After all, no matter how you look at him, he is just a child of 6 or 7 years old. If he participates in the battle between the 2 sides, he will most likely die violently. Forget it, let him stay here tonight, and be careful not to let him escape. Tomorrow morning, I will go to negotiate with Kurigakure village and discuss how to deal with it. In short, from now on, all of you will be old. Stay here honestly and don't go out at will. This is an order. After Shisui finished speaking, he glanced at Kimimaro with a headache, then turned and left the room. That night, the hotel stayed up all night. There was an uproar in the village outside and blood flowed into rivers. Under this situation, except for a few short-sighted people who could still sleep peacefully, no one else was in the mood to sleep. Bai Mingyu, Izumi Uchiha, and Azuki Shion were staying in the same room. From time to time, a rumbling explosion sound came from the window. Outside, there was a scene of fire, and several people's faces were cloudy and clear under the light of the fire. Indefinite. As this war, Quan pursed her lips tightly and stood in front of the window, muttering to herself. It's not a war, it's just a unilateral act of suicide by one clan against a village. Bai Mingyu looked at Kimimaro who was standing in the corner with some restraint, glanced outside the window, and whispered, no, if something unexpected happens, the Kagaya clan will be wiped out by tomorrow morning, and once the Kurigakure village reacts, no one among them will survive. How so? Izumi was stunned for a moment, and seemed to suddenly think of something. He turned around and looked at Kimimaro. By the way, this child is also from the Kagaya clan. If the Kagaya clan is destroyed, then he. At this time, Kimimaro was indeed stupid. To be precise, it was because he had been imprisoned in the dungeon for too long by the Kagaya clan and had no understanding of the world outside. Otherwise, he would not have been so easily fooled by Orochimaru's few words. He was so determined that he even put his life in Orochimaru's hands. But now, after being comforted by Izumi and Azuki Shion, Kimimaro no longer mentioned the matter of trying to find the people in Kurigakure village. He just stood in the corner with his lips pressed tightly, obviously still a little uneasy. Quan looked at him silently for a while, frowned, and suddenly said, Bai Yu, Sister Shion, how about we take him back to the village? Bai Mingyu was startled, and Mao Yu Shion also looked up. Quan hesitated for a moment, then slowly said what he was thinking. It's like this, if all the Kagaya clan members outside are wiped out by Kurigakure village, then he will be the only one left in this clan, and there will be no one left alone. Relatives, even if he is handed over to Kurigakure village, the result may not be good. Instead of doing this, why not take him back to Konoha village, and the 3rd generation will probably agree to take him in. It's not that Bai Mingyu hasn't thought about this idea. Indeed, although he is a member of the Kagaya clan, Kimimaro does not have a strong sense of belonging to either the Kagaya clan or the Kingdom of Water. Even if he is a member of the same clan, they have only been using and supporting him. If you continue to stay here, Kimimaro will end up with two consequences. Either he was discovered and killed by the people of Kurigakure village, or he was abducted and taken away by Orochimaru. No matter which one it was not a good ending. But it was not up to him and Izumi to take Kimimaro away. First of all, it was Nara Shikaku, the leader of the team. No matter what aspect he considered, it was difficult for him to agree to this approach, and even if Kimimaro was really taken away when Lu brought him back to Konoha, it was hard to say what the third Hokage's attitude was. Quan pursed his lips and fell silent. In silence, time passed by minute by second. From a certain moment, the movement outside began to weaken, and the sounds of shouting and killing gradually subsided. As the Kurigakure village, which was initially stunned, reacted, more and more Kurigakure ninjas gathered from all over the village, organized a defensive and counterattack formation, and launched an encirclement and suppression of the Kagaya clan and the Onodin clan. Even though these two clans are blood descendants with strong combat capabilities, they still suffered heavy casualties when facing opponents whose numbers were several times greater than theirs. Finally, after the fourth generation Mizukage Yagura solved the rebel Anbu who assassinated Mizukage, he personally led people to the battlefield and launched a bloody massacre against the Kagaya and Onodin clansmen. By the next morning, when a hint of fish belly white appeared on the horizon, the brief turmoil finally came to an end. The remaining Kurigakure ninjas began to busy cleaning up the battlefield. The corpses of Kagaya and Ghostlight were piled together, and from a distance it seemed as if they were piled into a hill. I'm sorry. This is an oversight on our part. However, something very serious has just happened in our Kurigakure village. We no longer have the energy to preside over the Chunin exams. Therefore, on behalf of Mr. Mizukage, I am announcing this time. The Chunin exams are over. Please lead the team and leave the Kingdom of Water as soon as possible. The hotel entrance. Terumi Mei led a team of Kurigakure Anbu and was making final negotiations with the leaders of several major countries. You're welcome, Terumi Mei-sama. We are deeply sorry that this kind of thing happened in your village. In this case, we will return to the country as a team as soon as possible and no longer delay your village's time. Nara Shikahisa said in a deep voice. There was no choice but to leave. Although the rebellion of the Kagaya and Onodin clans was suppressed, Kurigakure village also suffered serious losses. Putting aside the issue of the Chunin exam, even in peacetime, in order to avoid oneself various problems in the village were exposed and exploited. At this time, ninjas from other villages would never be allowed to stay in their own village and pose a threat. If nothing happens, Wuin village will soon be closed down and cleared of people. I know time may be tight, but by tonight at the latest, we will completely seal off the entire Kurigakure village, if you haven't left in time by then. The corners of Terumi Mei's lips curled up, and a meaningful smile appeared on her face. We can't guarantee what the consequences will be. The threat in his words was palpable. After finishing breakfast that day, Nara Shikaku immediately issued an order to prepare for evacuation. Everyone went back to their rooms to pack their things. After listening to Shisui's report, Nara Shikaku followed by Mingyu and the others to Izumi's room, and looked at Kimimaro who was squatting by the window with his hands and knees crossed. This is what you brought back yesterday. Is that the child of the Kagaya clan? Yes. Bai Mingyu and Quan looked at each other and said, the Kurigakure village has wiped out all the rebellious Kagaya clan. If this child is handed over to them, I am afraid he will be killed immediately, so Quan and Sister Shion after some discussion, I would like to ask Teacher Luju if you can take him with you when you go back and leave here together. Nara Shikaku pondered for a moment and slowly shook his head. These are extraordinary times. The Kagaya clan has just been exterminated by Kurigakure village for launching a rebellion. If we act rashly at this time, we are likely to cause unnecessary trouble. But Kimimaro is still just a child. Quan couldn't help but said, even if it is a rebellion, it is a matter decided by the adults. It has nothing to do with him. Can't we help him? Nara Shikaku held his chin with one hand and exchanged glances with Shisui a few times. They communicated secretly for a moment. After a while, he seemed to have made some decision and said in a deep voice, forget it, because of the civil strife that just broke out in Kurigakure village, we are now in a dilemma of insufficient manpower. If the guard is not so strict, it is not impossible to take him out. But we must wait for the opportunity to act. If something goes wrong, he must be abandoned to avoid direct conflict with Kurigakure village. In the position of Konoha's think tank, Nara Shikaku also has his own considerations. On the whole, it would be profitable to take Kimimaro back to Konoha. The Kagaya clan's corpse bloodline limit is famous far and wide. It was famous for its amazing combat effectiveness as early as the Warring States period. Although it has been declining in recent decades, if it is possible to take this bloodline limit into one's own hands, it can be used to overcome all obstacles. With a sharp sword, no ninja village other than Kurigakure had any reason to refuse. However, in these extraordinary times, careful trade-offs must be made. In view of the current situation in which the Kurigakure village is facing turmoil, even if they discover the existence of Kimimaro, as long as they respond appropriately and adopt the attitude of abandoning soldiers to protect the commander in time, I believe Kurigakure village will not dare to openly fall out with Konoha. In the end, Kimimaro was just along for the ride. It's great if you can take it out, but there won't be much loss if you can't. It's okay to take him with you, but to be on the safe side, you'd better find a way to hide the characteristics of the Kagaya clan on him, so as not to be discovered by Kurigakure village. Before leaving, Nara Shikaku gave another deliberate reminder. After the door closed, Kwon tilted his head and thought for a moment, then pulled Uoyukishian and whispered a few words, and the two girls started rummaging in the box. Bai Mingyu didn't know what they were planning, so he looked back at Kimimaro who was squatting by the window. From now on, this little Shota had been silent and turned a deaf ear to everything in the outside world. He only silently looked at the village in the distance through the window from time to time. In the middle, the corpses of the Kagaya clan were piled into a hill by the ninjas of Kurigakure village, with a somewhat complicated expression on their faces. I'm alone again. Everyone was killed. What on earth am I living for? Bai Mingyu came closer and couldn't help laughing when he heard Kimimaro murmuring almost to himself. Don't think too much, life is meaningless, but only by living can you find meaningful things. Like you saw this flower, like we met you. Well, leave here with us first, and then find a place according to your personal wishes, give birth to a baby, and live peacefully. It would be a pity if such a powerful blood inheritance boundary as corpse bone veins were to be broken here. Quote, flower. While he was talking, a few damaged white petals were blown by the wind, fluttering from nowhere and sticking to the window glass silently. Kimimaro looked up at the flower blankly, his eyes seemed to be unfocused, and he didn't know what he was thinking. On the other side, Kwon and Uoyukishian had already rummaged through and found what they wanted, but they were several bulging cloth bags piled on the bed. Teacher Shikaku is right. In order to avoid being discovered by people in Kurigakure village, we have to dress him up properly. Dress up well. Under Bai Mingyu's gaze, Kwon quickly turned the bag over and poured out a white printed women's dress, a pair of silk sleeves, and some miscellaneous cosmetics and headwear. You want this. In order to maintain their fighting power, the Kagaya clan does not keep women in the clan. In other words, as long as we dress him up as a girl, the people in Kurigakure village will definitely not suspect that he is related to the Kagaya clan. As for the forehead, these two red spots can also be covered up with makeup. Since his hair is so long, it is easy to pretend to be a girl with a little makeup. 10 minutes later, with the joint efforts of the two girls, Kwon and Uoyukishian, Bai Mingyu watched in amazement as Kimimaro transformed from a pretty little Shota into a pretty girl little by little. If Bai Mingyu hadn't seen his original appearance, and saw Kimimaro dressed like this for the first time, he might have mistaken him for a girl. Don't look at me like that. When I was at the ninja school, I got full marks in Mr. Nanya's disguise class. Kwon clapped his hands and made a victory gesture towards Bai Mingyu. There are a variety of courses taught in the ninja school, and there are also courses such as the art of disguise. However, because of the existence of the art of transformation, most students don't pay much attention to it. However, at certain times and occasions, this simple technique that does not consume chakra is more concealed than the transformation technique. As for Kimimaro, he probably didn't understand the difference between men's clothing and women's clothing at all. He just let Kwon and Uoyukishian dress him up with a confused look in his eyes. He seemed to be more in line with the image of a reclusive little girl who was not deeply involved in the world. Well, this is the so-called women's clothing boss, right? The evacuation process was smoother than expected. Due to the influence of the civil strife, almost all the elite ninjas of Kurigakure village were transferred to various parts of the village to evacuate the bigwigs from various countries who came to watch the Chunin exams, and to clean up the mess left by the rebellion of Kagaya and Onodin, and to be alert to possible dangers. There was new turmoil, so only 1 or 2 Kurigakure teams were sent to lead the participating teams from Konoha and Sunagakure and other ninja villages out of the village. There were almost no obstacles along the way. We left Kurigakure village smoothly and returned to the port on the border of the land of water before the sun set in the afternoon. The merchant ship we rode on before has been moored at the shore and has been waiting here for a long time. Kimimaro-chan, come back to Konoha with us. Sure. Izumi squatted down with his hands on his knees, looked at Kimimaro in front of him, and said with a smile, "Let me tell you, the living conditions in our Konoha village are much better than those in Kurigakure village, and the 3rd-generation grandfather is also a very kind person. Will never kill innocent people indiscriminately like your Mizukage and wipe out the entire clan at once. How about, come back to Konoha village with us? If something happens then, Yugao's sister can take care of you." Kimimaro looked at Quan silently, and slowly turned his attention to Bai Mingyu next to him. "Mr. Bai Yu, you should also advise him." Quan touched Bai Mingyu with his elbow. Bai Mingyu shrugged. "Although I also think that staying in Konoha is better than in the Kingdom of Water, it still depends on his own thoughts. If he doesn't want to go with us, we can't force him." "I'm willing to go with you." Kimimaro agreed simply. This time, it was Bai Mingyu's turn to be surprised. Izumi looked at each other, and the two of them looked at Nara Shikaku. The latter pondered for a moment, sighed and said, "Then let him get on the boat with us first." "Right, but after arriving in the village, whether you can take him in or not depends on the 3rd generation. If the 3rd generation doesn't agree, you can only send him to a nearby village to live." Soon, a group of people boarded the ship, and the merchant ship slowly sailed into the sea. As the shadow of the Kingdom of Water gradually faded away, except for the deep blue sea surface nearby, everything in the distance fell into a gray scene. Standing on the deck, you could clearly hear the sound of the ship churning the water reaching your ears. At about the same time that the Konoha Chunin exam team left, they were on a cliff on the north side of Kurigakure village. A remnant of the army stood here, looking at the Kurigakure village in the distance. Everyone was injured, and some of them were covered in blood, as if they had just crawled out of a pool of blood. The leading man was tall and stared at the village in the distance, not knowing what he was thinking. "Zabuza-sama, if we don't leave, it will be too late. People from Kurigakure village may catch up at any time." Finally, the man took a deep breath and turned around, glanced at a child with a delicate face who was standing beside him, and touched the latter's head, as if speaking to him or talking to himself, said, "Bye, starting from today, we will leave the Kingdom of Water, but one day I will return here and make this my country. For this, I need more powerful power and funds to prepare a coup. I understand, Zabuza-sama, please carry me with you like a tool. I will become Zabuza-sama's weapon." Shiro looked up and smiled, with no trace of color in his clear eyes. Zabuza took another deep look at Kurigakure. His eyes struggled for a moment, and when he looked back, only determination remained. Gone. After a few ups and downs, the remnant quickly disappeared into the forest, heading in the opposite direction to Kurigakure village. 10 minutes later, there was another gust of wind, and a group of Anbu from Kurigakure village appeared here. One of them squatted on the ground, picked up a handful of soil and sniffed. "They did pass by here just now, and they didn't leave for a long time. I chased him in that direction." There were several clusters of sounds, and the figure of the Anbu also disappeared at the same time. "A merchant ship that has sailed into the sea. Go back and rest early. It will take almost 2 days of sailing on the sea before we can see land again." Jesui patted the shoulders of Bai Mingyu and Quan and others, turned around and walked towards the cabin. The civil strife in Kurigakure village suddenly broke out, resulting in the cancellation of the originally scheduled Chunin exam. For genin like Bai Mingyu and others, the trip was naturally in vain, but for Konoha and the Land of Fire, these things contained extremely important consequences. Precious information. After several Junin collective analysis and discussion, maybe a lot of valuable information can be unearthed. "I'm going back too. I didn't sleep last night and I'm a little sleepy." After saying hello to Quan and Uezuki Shion, Bai Mingyu also turned around and returned to the cabin. Kimimaro hesitated for a moment and quickly followed. By the way, why have you been following me? Hearing the sound of footsteps, Bai Mingyu glanced back with helplessness on his face. It couldn't be that Kimimaro's original feelings for Orochimaru were transferred to him just because he said a few lines about Uncle Snake abducting children. Well, if that's the case, this child would be too easily abducted, right? Kimimaro paused, his eyes fixed on Bai Mingyu, and he said nothing. But as soon as Bai Mingyu left, he immediately followed him. Forget it, just follow if you want. You didn't sleep last night. You should be very tired now. Just rest at my place first. He casually pointed his bed to Kimimaro and watched the young Shota climb up and lie down. Bai Mingyu himself walked to the small round window on the inside of the cabin, moved a chair and sat down, holding his chin with one hand. Look out the window. To others, he looked at the window in a daze, but Bai Mingyu's mind was no longer here. Instead, he silently opened his system backpack and looked at something extra inside. It was a glass of bright red blood. Although it is blood, it does not smell bad. It does not have the usual fishy smell of blood. Instead, it exudes an intoxicating aura. Just looking at it, it seems as if someone is tempting you to drink it. This cup of blood is what was opened from the silver treasure chest that was refreshed at the Kagaya clan's station yesterday. The imperial equipment of ice, the demon god appears the demon's essence. The original owner of this taigu was the powerful imperial general Esdeath in the world of slayers, and the demonic essence was evaluated as the strongest of all taigu. Legend has it that it was made from the blood of a super dangerous species living in the far north. It contained powerful power and the desire to kill. Everyone who tasted this cup of donated blood, except Esdeath, was killed. The desire drives you crazy, but once it is successfully overcome, the user can freely create and control ice. It is a veritable taigu of ice. In the original work, Esdeath relied on this imperial weapon to become invincible, and even developed the move, Mokobotomo, that can freeze time and space. It is an almost unsolvable ability. But, Bai Mingyu's eyes moved to the additional explanation of Devil's Essence. Warning. Under the current attribute status of the host, the death rate of taking this product directly will exceed 50, please use it with caution. Before taking this cup of blood, there are two issues that must be prioritized. First, the raw material of Devil's Essence comes from the super dangerous species in the far north. While the blood contains power, it also contains the uncontrollable desire to kill in the blood of the super dangerous species. People who are slightly lacking in physical fitness and willpower people are likely to be controlled by desire, deprived of their own will, and become crazy. Second, in principle, a person cannot use two taigu at the same time, because this thing is too heavy on the body and energy. If more than two taigu are used at the same time, it is likely to pose a threat to life and cause physical damage, collapse. So, according to the system's judgment, my current physique and willpower are not enough to withstand the murderous desire of the Devil's Essence. Once I take it, I will probably fall into the same fate as those who are driven crazy. Furthermore, even if you can withstand the risk of 50% mortality, as long as you obtain the ability of the Devil's Essence, it means that you will probably no longer be able to use the ability of the Lion King. Bai Mingyu was silent. It is undeniable that the demon essence is very powerful, but the Lion King's half-animal state and strong recovery ability are also very useful to him, and they are even more indispensable at this stage. If you can only choose between the two, it's really hard to choose. Fortunately, we don't have to make a decision immediately. Let's wait until the attribute value is higher. Anyway, now is not a time when life is at stake. Soda Shirayuki's ice escape ability has not reached its bottleneck and can be further developed. Bai Mingyu exhaled, put away the Devil's Essence again, and returned to reality. The sky outside the window gradually darkened, and in the afternoon, strong winds began to blow. Raindrops as dense as soybeans fell from the sky. The entire sea began to swell, and the merchant ships bumped forward slowly. Bai Mingyu also felt a little sleepy, so he simply lay down on the table and fell asleep. In the middle of the night, while he was sleeping, Bai Mingyu suddenly felt his body shaking violently, as if something slammed into the table, and he woke up suddenly. What happened? Looking up, the surroundings were already dark, and everyone else in the cabin was sleeping. Suddenly, a glimmer of light appeared on the bed opposite, but it was Shin who lit a candle. Under the weak firelight, he quickly put on his clothes and then grabbed the long knife beside the pillow. Maybe the hull of the ship is there. You hit something in the sea. Let's go out and have a look. Bai Mingyu also put on his coat and quickly walked out of the cabin with Shin without notifying others. As soon as they went out, they heard a burst of noisy shouting and footsteps. Several sailors hurried over. Oh no, please inform the captain quickly. There are also ninjas from Konoha. They are those pirates. Pirate. Bai Mingyu was slightly startled. One of the sailors had already seen him and Shin, and he stopped and shouted, "Quick, go and call your teacher. There is a group of pirates outside blocking our ship. We can't hold it anymore." As he spoke, a sharp arrow came through the air with a sharp sound of wind, and landed not far away from several people. At the end of the arrow, there is a lit detonating talisman. Not good. Bai Mingyu and Shin reacted very quickly. The moment they saw the detonating talisman clearly, they rushed out to both sides. The next moment, the detonating talisman exploded with fierce fire, and the sailor was thrown away. When he landed on the ground, half of his body was covered in blood and flesh by the detonating talisman. He was seeing more air coming out and less air coming in. Standing up with lingering fear, the two of them looked in the direction of the arrow. In the dark rain curtain, a tall shadow appeared in front of the merchant ship. On the tall mast, there was a skull and crossbones flag symbolizing the identity of the pirate. At this moment, a long wooden board was stretched from the pirate ship to the side of the merchant ship. One after another, fierce men armed with knives, clubs and sharp blades rushed over with roars and chopped down the sailors on the deck one by one. Save people first. Go and inform the others and Shikaku-sensei. Bai Mingyu and Shin spoke at the same time, and they looked at each other. Without saying a word, Shin rushed forward with his sword, quickly rescued a sailor from a pirate's sword, and then fought with him. Bai Mingyu turned around and saw Kimimaro, who had just been woken up, and hurried out of the cabin. He quickly said, "Kimimaro, go find Quan and Xian and tell them that pirates are coming and tell them to hurry up. Notify others." Oh. Kimimaro was stunned for a moment, then responded, immediately turned around and ran towards the cabin inside. Bai Mingyu rushed towards the pirates and joined the melee. This group of pirates was obviously well prepared. Although most of them were a group of gangsters who were robbing houses, there were a few very skilled guys who focused on Shin and Bai Mingyu. After seeing them join the battle group, they quickly outflanked them from both sides. With one against many, and in such a dark night with heavy rain, and the figures 3 to 5 meters away were blurred, Bai Mingyu was helpless. There are too many people, so one would not dare to use the half-animal transformation ability, and large-scale ninjutsu can easily cause accidental injuries, so one can only fight with the opponent through physical skills. After just a few minutes of boarding battle, a bearded man who looked like the leader of the pirates suddenly raised his sword and shouted, "Everyone, retreat first. The ninjas of Konoha will be here soon, take the hostages, and leave quickly." As soon as he finished speaking, the pirates on the merchant ship retreated one by one and ran back from the long plank. Some pirates saw that the distance was too far and they couldn't catch up. They directly killed the sailors in front of them and then turned around and jumped into the sea. Soon someone threw down the lifebuoy and rope and pulled them back. When a burst of noisy footsteps sounded and Nara Shikaku, Uchiha Shisui and others hurried over, the people on the pirate ship had already lifted the planks and thrown them into the sea. They quickly set sail and turned around and sailed away. The bearded pirate leader, he stood on the deck and made a motion of slitting his throat towards them, his face looking ferocious and cruel. What happened? Bai Mingyu gasped slightly. To be honest, he was a little confused himself. The melee happened so suddenly that he didn't know exactly when this group of pirates appeared and what their intentions were. Or a sailor with a minor injury next to him ran over and briefly explained what happened. After listening to the sailor's story, Nara Shikaku looked gloomy. "Let's count the number of people first to see if there are any casualties." As he spoke, Shisui glanced at everyone quickly, checked twice, and said, "Shikaku-sama, the letter from Danzo-sama's subordinate, and Miyaya from Choza-sama's subordinate, these two are not here. Also, these two people are not here. It seems that Captain Mr. Kizzy's son was also kidnapped. Captain Kizzy's son is named Bucky. He is a young man of 17 or 18 years old. He serves as an observer on the ship. It stands to reason that he should be the first person to discover traces of pirates, but he is not on the ship. While he was talking, Captain Kizzy had already run over with several sailors. As soon as he arrived, he knelt down with a plop. Master Ninja of Konoha, please save my son. Those pirates kill without blinking an eye and will definitely kill him. Nara Shikaku's expression changed a few times, and he slowly said, Mr. Kiki, you don't have to worry about this. Even if no one is kidnapped, we Konoha ninjas will not watch those pirates act recklessly in front of us. But I hope you can cooperate with us. After all, we are not familiar with the situation in the nearby area, and we need help from you local residents to help guide us. People must be saved. There are a total of 12 genin who came this time. There was no attrition in the Chunin exams, but now 2 of them were kidnapped by a group of pirates. This behavior is simply a provocation to Konoha. But how to rescue is a question that needs to be discussed. In the captain's room, a map is spread out on the table. The paper looks to be quite old, the edges have turned yellow, and there are traces of being soaked and dried by seawater. Nara Shikaku stretched out an index finger and clicked somewhere in the lower right corner of the map. Look, this is where we are now, in a sea area between the Kingdom of Waves and the Kingdom of Water, and that group of pirates off in the place of activity is among the islands near the country of waves. There are many islands in this place, most of which are small islands that can be used for temporary settlement, but it is difficult to use them as a stronghold for a large number of people to occupy for a long time. There are 7 islands that can be used as nests by groups of pirates, and they are here, here and here. In other words, do we need to separate 7 teams to investigate these islands separately? Bai Mingyu looked at the places Nara Shikaku pointed at one by one and asked subconsciously. Nara Shikaku shook his head and said, the distribution of these 7 islands is not completely scattered. They can be roughly divided into 3 areas. This means that 3 teams must be organized to investigate the intelligence. At the same time, there must be people staying on the merchant ships, because we are not sure whether those pirates will come again, and we also need to take care of the wounded. In the Chunin exams a few days ago, a few suffered minor or serious injuries. Although they recovered their ability to move with the help of medical ninjas, their combat effectiveness, which was not too high, was once again compromised. The only ones that can be used as combat power are Shisui, take 2 Anbu members and go to this island to investigate. Hayama, take Root and Wind with you to investigate this island. Be careful not to engage in combat with pirates. Once you confirm the opponent's location, immediately launch a signal flare to notify other teams. The other 2 Anbu are following me, Shirou, Izumi, and Shiyan. You and the other genin stay on the ship to protect Captain Kiki and others and prevent those pirates from launching another sneak attack. Nara Shikaku thought for a moment and began to assign tasks. Bai Mingyu hesitated for a moment and said, Teacher Luju, let us go to the 3rd team. Although there is a certain danger in investigating the intelligence, it is not necessary to fight those pirates head-on. On the contrary, if they come to attack the merchant ship, use your shadow. The binding spell can control them immediately, and we may lose sight of it. Nara Shikaku was startled for a moment, and looked over calmly. That being said, there are only 3 of you, and there is no Jonin to lead the team. Trust us, Shikaku-sensei. Bai Mingyu smiled. If it hadn't been for the sudden civil strife in Kurigakure village, Izumi and I might have become Chunin by now. Just leading a team to investigate the intelligence of a group of pirates, this kind of task can be easily completed. Not to mention Sister Shion. Also, if there is an emergency, we will fire flares in time to call for support. While talking, Quan and Uoyuki Shion stood behind Bai Mingyu, and Kimimaro also came over silently. Okay, then you must pay attention to safety and act with caution. Nara Shikaku warned. After a while, the merchant ship anchored on a larger island and lowered several small boats. The 3 teams took up signal flares and rowed in different directions. There is of course a reason why Bai Mingyu took the initiative to request the investigation mission. Just now, when he saw the map in the captain's room, he subconsciously compared it with the treasure chest map in his mind and found that the 2 were very similar. In other words, the refresh locations of the treasure chests he had seen in the country of waves were on this island. 4 treasure chests. Even if there is only 1 bronze among them and the others are all black iron, it is enough for him to take action. That's why Bai Mingyu took the initiative to ask for help when Nara Shikaku arranged a task, and took Izumi and Uazuki Shion to investigate. As for Kimimaro, hey, why did you come here? Bai Mingyu took his mind back from the map, turned his head and saw Kimimaro at the stern of the boat. He was slightly startled, and Quan next to him said, "Didn't teacher Shikaku agree just now? There are only 3 people in our team, which is smaller than the average. The 4-person team is missing 1 person. Although Kimimaro is a little younger, he is still very good at physical skills and will not hold us back. I'm not saying forget it. Just follow. Remember to follow the command." Bai Mingyu has no doubt about Kimimaro's strength. As a genius of the Kagaya clan who awakened the ability of corpse veins at a young age, there is no doubt about Kimimaro's taijutsu ability. Even if he is only 6 or 7 years old, his strength can already compete with many genin. Even rivaled by chunin. But, why do you always follow them? In the eyes of this young lady, he is more trustworthy than others. If you think about it carefully, the truth may be that simple. For Kimimaro, who has been raised as a secret weapon by his tribe since he was a child and has been imprisoned in a dark dungeon, he actually always carries fear and loneliness in his heart, just like a moth living in the darkness all year round. As long as you see a little bit of fire, you will rush towards it, even if it will be burned to ashes by the flames the next moment. Therefore, in the original work, even though he clearly knew that Orochimaru was using him, Kimimaro was still devoted to him, and even sincerely longed to become Orochimaru's container. It has nothing to do with the character of the person following. Human beings are ultimately no match for lonely animals. Arrive. The boat docked at the island. Several people got up and went ashore. Bai Mingyu took out a map from his arms, compared it, and looked up in a direction ahead. Yes, this is one of the places that may be used as a pirate stronghold. Quan, you and Sister Shion go there east. Kimimaro and I will go west and search along the island, trying not to alert the snake. If we really find the lair of those guys, we will use this to send a signal. With that said, Bai Mingyu handed the signal bomb to Quan. Hey, isn't there only one flare? It's for me and Sister Shion. What about you? Don't worry, I have other options. Bai Mingyu smiled, turned and walked to the west. That's it, let's do it. Kimimaro, let's go. Kimimaro responded and followed step by step. As he walked, he pulled out the bone blade from his sleeve and stared at the surroundings with vigilance, as if he was a personal guard. Bai Mingyu glanced at him, said nothing, and acted quickly. On the other side, Quan and Uazuki Shion also ran to the east side of the island according to the plan. After passing through a small forest, Bai Mingyu slowed down, adjusted his direction, and began to rush towards the southwest of the island. That is the direction in which the 4 treasure chests are refreshed. Originally, for the sake of confidentiality, Bai Mingyu planned to act alone, but that seemed too deliberate, so he arranged for Kimimaro to join his team. Even if he saw something, Kimimaro didn't understand his situation. There will be no doubt. However, judging from Kimimaro's current performance, it seems that he has been regarded as Orochimaru in the original work, and he seems to be inseparable. This kind of behavior should be psychologically a sign of lack of security. If it really replaces Orochimaru's position in Kimimaro's heart, it will not be harmful to Bai Mingyu, because then there is no need to worry about him telling his story. With a thought in his mind, Bai Mingyu's footsteps suddenly stopped when he was about to pass through a small forest. Kimimaro quickly stopped and almost bumped into Bai Mingyu due to the effect of inertia. Lord Bai Yu, shish. Bai Mingyu made a silent gesture and squatted down in the grass. Kimimaro also lay down on his shoulders and looked out through a bush. At the foot of a mountain not far ahead, there is a row of tent-like buildings. They look like they were temporarily built with wood and stones. They are very simple in appearance. Several strong men are entering inside. Going in and out, there are several bonfires set up at the door, and the aroma of grilled fish is constantly wafting out. Several horses were tied up next to the barracks. Is this the stronghold of those pirates? Bai Mingyu frowned and slowly looked around. 1, 2, there are 4 people that can be seen, plus the total number of people in the tent should not exceed 7. Most of them were ordinary people. Even those who engaged in the pirate business were just strong men. If they really wanted to take action, it would not be a problem for him and Kimimaro to fight several of them alone. But the purpose of coming here this time was not only to find these pirates, but also to investigate where they took the hostages. For Bai Mingyu, he also had to consider the issue of those treasure chests. From the map, 3 of the 4 treasure chests were refreshed in this camp, but they were separated by a layer of tent cloth and could not see what was inside. There were at least dozens of people on the pirate ship that came to attack the merchant ship last night, but there are only 6 or 7 here. It seems that there must be more than one stronghold. Bai Mingyu thought for a moment, then turned around and told Kimimaro, "Kimimaro, just stay here and don't move. I'll go over and take a look." As he spoke, Bai Mingyu leaned forward and slowly touched forward. As he walked, his waist sank, his ears changed, and his whole person quietly entered a semi-animal state. The voices heard more than 10 meters away could be heard clearly. "Brother, do you think we will cause trouble if we make such a big noise this time? Why, are you afraid? Let me tell you, the reputation of these great country ninja villages is actually false. So what about the Konoha ninjas? They were disrupted by our attack. Who can catch them on this sea? We pirates who come and go as we please." "That's what I said, but I feel very panicked." "Okay, stop talking nonsense, eat something quickly, and go meet the boss and the others." While talking, a bald man with tattoos on his arms divided the grilled fish among several other people and started eating. Bai Mingyu lay in the grass and watched all this, thoughtfully. Originally, Bai Mingyu thought that these pirates were interested in the money and goods on the merchant ship before launching the attack, and did not know that there were Konoha ninjas on board. But now it seems that they knew that this ship was aboard the Konoha ninjas, but still choose it as the target, which is a bit interesting. Could he be an enemy of Konoha? Otherwise, who would dare to launch such a blatant provocation against Konoha? Soon, several pirates hurriedly finished their food. With a swipe of their mouths, the bald man kicked over the bonfire, stepped on it twice, and then waved the other people away. Seeing them get on their horses, Bai Mingyu was about to get up when he suddenly felt something was wrong. This feeling is, suddenly, the soil beneath my feet collapsed. A dry arm suddenly came out from the ground, raised its hand and grabbed Bai Mingyu's ankle, and then dragged him down. Earth escape heart beheading technique. Caught off guard, Bai Mingyu sank rapidly until his waist was completely submerged under the soil, and then he used his hands to stop his fall, competing with the strength of the man below. On the other side, the bald man and others who were about to leave also turned around, picked up the machetes, axes and other weapons around them, and rushed over quickly. "Kill him!" the bald man shouted loudly. Counted. Bai Mingyu's heart sank. There was nothing to be afraid of these pirates. When he sneaked over, he had already made plans and preparations to be discovered, but what surprised him was that there were actually ninjas among these people, and their strength seemed to be quite high. In just a few seconds, the bald man had already led his men to kill him. He strode over and struck down with a huge axe, as if he was going to split Bai Mingyu in half with one blow. At this moment, a gray figure suddenly jumped out. Like a cannonball, it hit the bald man hard and knocked him out with his axe. It's Kimimaro. This change was beyond the expectations of all pirates. 2 of them were stunned for a moment, then turned and rushed towards Kimimaro, shouting and waving sharp machetes to greet him. Seeing that blood would be spattered on the spot in the next moment, Kimimaro's shoulders, back, and ribs suddenly he found a few white bones, held the machete firmly, then held the bone blade in his hand and pierced the chest of one of them. The blood inheritance limit ability of corpse bone veins. This guy is a monster. Several pirates were terrified. At the same time, Bai Mingyu felt the strength under his feet loosen, and immediately used both arms to escape and return to the ground. Then he took out Shu Baishui from behind, held the handle of the knife with both hands, and stabbed hard on the ground. A touch of cold air quickly hit the ground, spread through cracks. The first dance of the moon. With a bang, the frost froze at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the hole that Bai Mingyu had just escaped from was filled with ice. Not only that, the cold air continued to expand along the underground passage, and only a muffled sound was heard, 7 or 8 meters away from Bai Mingyu. At that place, a figure jumped out from the ground, turned around and was about to run away. Moonstep. Bai Mingyu jumped up to catch up, stepped on the air several times with his soles, then took out a Fuma shuriken from his backpack with his backhand, and threw it out with a raised hand. The huge shuriken made a sharp arc in midair. Even though the man had raised his arm to resist, he was still severely scraped away by the blade, and the wound was a bloody mess. "Surrender, I surrender. Don't kill me," the man wailed, knelt on the ground with his head in his hands, and screamed. Bai Mingyu was stunned for a moment, not sure what he was doing, but out of caution, he quickly threw a shuriken, piercing the crooks of both arms of the man, causing a splash of blood. Injury to the arms means that the hands are disabled and cannot form seals. For ninjas, being unable to form seals means that the strength is reduced by at least half. After doing all this, Bai Mingyu turned over and landed on the ground, looking back. Kimimaro had already waved the bone blade repeatedly, and combined with the white bone spurs on his body, knocked down several pirates in front of him one by one. Almost everyone was bleeding and seriously injured. The remaining pirates had already disappeared from sight. Kimimaro looked over to Bai Mingyu hesitantly, as if asking if he wanted to pursue them. "Forget it, these few survivors are enough. Be careful not to kill them." After finding some ropes, Bai Mingyu tied the pirates together. 2 of them were seriously injured. Bai Mingyu found some bandages from the tent and simply bandaged them to stop the bleeding. In the process, he opened several treasure chests in the camp. Congratulations to the host for opening the black iron treasure chest and obtaining Silvertail X8572. Congratulations to the host for opening the black iron treasure chest and obtaining Bingliang Pills X10. Congratulations to the host for opening the black iron treasure chest and obtaining Bamboo Dragonfly X1. The Bamboo Dragonfly, the flying prop in Doraemon's treasure box, can be controlled by the brain to fly at will by just wearing it on the head. It can fly continuously in the air at a speed of 80 km per hour for 8 hours. When the battery is out of power, it can rest for 20 days. You can still use it for hours. It was normal for silver coins and ninja tools to be found in the black iron treasure chest. Bai Mingyu didn't expect anything good to be found in it anyway, but the last item found was a bit unexpected. Bamboo Dragonfly. Looking at the little thing in his hand that was similar to the toy he played with when he was a child, Bai Mingyu's expression was a little subtle. He wanted to put it on his head and try to see if it could really fly into the sky. But considering the current situation, he had to suppress his curiosity first and palm his hands. He took the bamboo dragonfly back to his backpack. "Next, let's interrogate him first. I originally thought it would take some trouble, but I didn't expect that the earth-bending ninja who was ambushing him before was a soft persimmon." Before Bai Mingyu could ask any questions, he screamed and said, "Help, help me stop the bleeding. Boss Kato asked us to do it. He asked us to attack your merchant ship. Otherwise, even if you lend me 10 courages, I would not dare to provoke you Konoha ninjas." Kato. Hearing the name again, Bai Mingyu frowned. What does it mean? It turns out that these pirates are not actually pirates. They were gangsters from nearby countries. They were hired by Cardo Company to pretend to be pirates. Before attacking fishermen in this area, the boatmen who went fishing in the country of waves were killed by them. And this ninja actually only knows a few simple earth escape ninjutsus. His strength is similar to that of the genin of Iwagakure village. He is also a helper hired by Kato. What exactly does Kato want to do? We don't know either. Boss Kato only hired us to do things for him. He didn't say anything else. If you don't believe it, you can ask other people. Nothing I said is a lie, the Earth Dunin ninja swore. Forget it, let's not talk about too many cards. The last question is, where are the Konoha ninjas who were kidnapped by you yesterday? A few minutes later, Bai Mingyu raised his knife and knocked out several pirates one by one. He held his chin and pondered. According to the confession of the Earth Escape Ninja, this attack on the merchant ship was entirely under the command of Cardo Company. As for the reason, Bai Mingyu can probably guess some of the news he heard during the 2 days he stayed in the country of waves. Cardo Company's purpose is probably to acquire the country of waves in advance. First, they hired gangsters and wandering ninjas, pretended to be pirates, and burned, killed, and looted in the waters near the country of waves, so that the fishermen of the country of waves did not dare to go to sea. At the same time, the other side offered high prices to buy ships. Due to the threat of pirates and driven by profit, many fishermen will inevitably sell their boats. Once Cardo Company obtains most of the ferries in the country of waves, it is equivalent to taking their maritime industry into their hands. In this case, as long as we take a few measures, we can control the economic lifeline of the entire country. Even if the people of Wave Country are aware of it, it's useless. In this country without ninjas, no one can disobey Cardo's orders. Judging from the original plot, Cardo's operation should have failed. It is Konoha's 52-stone year. Naruto is still a child under 5 years old. Considering the time when Team 7 comes to the country of waves to perform missions in the future and meets Zabuza and Haku, it will be a few years before Cardo Company fully controls the economic lifeline of the country of waves. Now it seems that Cardo has set his sights on the country of waves in advance, but judging from the results, it may not be what happened in the next few years that forced Cardo's plan to control the country of waves to be postponed. Could it be that at this time in the original book, a group of Konoha ninjas returned from the Kingdom of Water and were attacked by Cardo people? However, because he underestimated the strength of Konoha, he failed to demonstrate and was taught by Konoha ninjas who passed by at that time. Bai Mingyu thought about it for a few seconds and then stopped thinking about it. Suddenly, as if he felt something in his heart, he raised his head and looked in one direction, and saw a red light point slowly rising into the sky, exploding into a ball of bright red mist at the highest point, which was clearly visible for several kilometers. It's the direction of the flare. Is Quan and Yuoyu's face beautiful? Bai Mingyu's pupils shrank. Judging from the direction of the signal bomb, the incident location should be in the southeast corner of the island, not far from where he and Kimimaro are now. Calling Kimimaro, the two of them hurried on at full speed, and soon arrived at the location where the signal flare was launched. From a distance, they saw Azuki Shion standing with his back against a pine tree, his left hand on his shoulder, and his face looked a little pale. Sister Shion, why are you alone, the enemy? Bai Mingyu came to Maoyu Shion and looked around, but did not find Quan. Quan was captured. Cough cough. Uoyuki Shion's chest heaved violently, and she suddenly coughed a few times in the middle of her words. Then she took a deep breath and continued. Two of those people are ninjas, and there is another person who is good at using a knife. We were not prepared in advance. Quan Bu I accidentally fell into a plot by one of them, and when they were captured, they fled in that direction. With that said, Maoyu Shion raised her hand and pointed in one direction. Bai Mingyu's face changed slightly. Izumi and Uezuki Shion also encountered ninjas here. It was not surprising that Cardo Company could not only hire a ninja with Earth Escape. But if you can kidnap Quan, you have some skills. After all, Izumi is also a member of the Uchiha clan, and he has just opened the Sharingan not long ago. Even if he has not fully mastered the power of the Sharingan, his strength has far exceeded that of ordinary genin. In addition, he has a unique ability. The beauty of Maoyu and Shiyan of common swordsmanship. To be able to defeat the two of them, his strength should be at least close to that of a Chunin. Kimimaro, please stay here and take care of Sister Shion. Bai Mingyu turned around and warned Kimimaro. What about you? Maoyu Shion was stunned for a moment. Kimimaro also looked over in astonishment. I'm going to rescue Izumi. The signal flare has been sent out. Teacher Shisui and the others should have seen it. Someone will come from other places to pick you up soon. I will leave guidance marks along the way. You can catch up and support me when the time comes. Quote. Bai Mingyu took out a row of shurikens from his ninja tool bag, gestured to Uoyuki Shion, then turned around and chased after Quan in the direction where he was kidnapped. After leaving the sight of the two people, Bai Mingyu turned his palm, took out the bamboo dragonfly from his backpack, and pressed it on the top of his head. He heard a huffing sound. The propeller of the bamboo dragonfly spun at high speed, taking Bai Mingyu's body slowly off the ground and upwards. Fly through the air. The speed of a bamboo dragonfly is 80 kilometers per hour, which is more than meters per second, which is much faster than riding a horse. Soon, I saw several blurry figures at the end of my field of vision. It is indeed a spring. Bai Mingyu turned on his half-animal state and looked forward. He saw several people running wildly on horseback. One of them had a tied girl on his horse. He was apparently in the middle of nowhere with his eyes closed. Uchiha Izumi in coma. Directly in front of this group of people, about a few miles away, was a raised hill. In the valley sat a tall building with a very strange style. It looked like a castle made of stones. There was something vague inside. Several figures moved. That direction should be the home base of this group of pirates. Bai Mingyu narrowed his eyes, paused slightly in his forward momentum, and then leaned over and rushed towards several people on horseback. There was a gust of wind. One of the pirates seemed to hear the sound. He turned his head and looked behind him with some doubts. When he saw Bai Mingyu passing by in the air, he seemed to be stunned for a moment. He rubbed his eyes and looked over. His eyes suddenly widened. Lingda suddenly raised his hand and pointed to the sky. Guigi. Hearing the sound, several other people also turned their heads and looked towards the sky. Bai Mingyu's eyes darkened, and he reached behind his back with his hands. 2 huge Fuma shurikens were held in his palms, and he flicked them with all his strength. The wind demon shuriken swept towards several pirates with a sharp sound of breaking wind. This large-scale ninja tool seems bulky, but it has quite good damage and attack range. Bai Mingyu is now using it more easily. Anyway, these items can often be found in the treasure chests he usually opens, so there is no need to worry about the consumption of the ninja tool. Seeing that the Fuma shuriken was about to fly in front of him, one of the pirates suddenly put his hand on his waist, and a bright sword light burst out, suddenly forming a sharp arc, knocking the wind demon shuriken away. After that, the pirate turned over and jumped on his horse. He took advantage of the force and jumped up, waving the long knife, and continued forward, rushing toward Bai Mingyu's throat. At the critical moment, Bai Mingyu twisted his waist and turned sideways, barely avoiding the slash, and then turned over and landed on the ground. This guy is a samurai, and the strength is not low. Bai Mingyu had paid attention to this profession as early as the Ninja World History course at the ninja school. Different from the ninja sect founded by the Six Paths Sage, the samurai is another system opposite to the ninja. It does not rely on chakra and ninjutsu, but improves its strength by constantly honing its physical skills and sword skills. The place where it lives is mainly concentrated near the Iron Country. However, in modern times, as the ninja sect became more and more prosperous, some samurai began to try to use chakra and combine it with sword skills to form a new samurai school. The sharp blade light just now was caused by the chakra attached to the blade and released. I am afraid that it was also mixed with changes in the nature of ninjutsu. Shave. The thoughts in his mind flashed away, and Bai Mingyu jumped up and ran straight towards Uchiha Spring. However, as soon as he appeared, the samurai seemed to have predicted his landing point in advance and waved violently. With a slash of the knife, the blade struck forward, almost cutting Bai Mingyu in half from the middle. Iron block. Bai Mingyu raised his arm to block, and rolled on the spot to avoid the next few swords struck by the samurai. However, after such a delay, several other pirates had recovered and surrounded Bai Mingyu from several directions. One of them asked sharply, "Who are you?" Bai Mingyu said nothing. He initially planned to use the momentum of the dive to recapture Quan in one go, and then decide whether to fight or leave depending on the situation. However, due to the appearance of this samurai, the original plan was completely disrupted. I never expected that among the other people there would be a swordsman with such superb swordsmanship. The raid to save people failed, but once these guys reacted. Almost at the same time that this idea came to Bai Mingyu's mind, the samurai holding the sword seemed to realize something and turned his head to look in Quan's direction. The pirate in that direction was stunned for a moment, then realized quickly and picked up the knife and put it across Quan's neck. Watching him finish all this, the warrior turned his head and showed a cold smile towards Bai Mingyu. "Kid, you want to save your companion, right? Now her life is in our hands, what are you going to do?" "How to do it?" "Exchange." Bai Mingyu took a deep breath and looked at the pirates calmly. "One life for another, I will be your hostage, you let the girl go, what are the conditions?" With the Lion King as his trump card, Bai Mingyu is not worried about what these pirates will do to him. No matter what, he is sure to escape unscathed, but Quan is different. If these pirates are really cruel, Shimei will be killed here. Several pirates looked at each other. "Don't talk nonsense to him. We don't have time. Get rid of him quickly before other Konoha ninjas find this place." A tall pirate snorted coldly, and the samurai nodded and said, "Okay, then kill him." As he spoke, the warrior put his right hand on his waist and slowly walked towards Bai Mingyu. "As long as you move, we will kill your companions immediately." With a cold threat, the warrior stopped 10 meters away from Bai Mingyu, suddenly accelerated his charge, drew his sword and slashed. Drink. The sword flashed. There was no time to react. A dazzling sword light cut across Bai Mingyu's waist, cutting him into two halves. The samurai seemed to have seen the scene of blood rushing. He stretched out his tongue and licked his lips, with a look on his face. A ferocious and bloodthirsty sick smile. Die. Following an extremely subtle sound, Bai Mingyu's broken body suddenly turned into a puddle of water and fell to the ground with a crash. At the same time, a figure that no one could see rushed past the warrior. A dodge appeared next to the pirate who hijacked the spring. He held the blade with his bare hands and broke it with all his strength. The heavy machete was broken into two pieces with a click, and then as others watched in horror, the tip of the knife seemed to float out of thin air and slashed towards the pirate's throat. A flash of blood. The pirate covered his neck and took 2 steps back, staring at the air in front of him in horror, as if he wanted to say something, but when the words reached his mouth, he fell on his back and lost his voice. I didn't want to use this trick originally. Bai Mingyu sighed and took off the invisibility cloak from his head. His figure appeared out of thin air where the pirate fell to the ground, looking extremely strange, with a few splashes of blood on his face. Who the hell are you? It wasn't until this moment that the samurai reacted. His face became distorted due to panic. He suddenly looked at the other pirates and asked, Shinsuke, are you not ready yet? This Konoha ninja is not easy to deal with. Hurry up. Let's kill him. Shinjia. Bai Mingyu followed the sound and saw another pirate making a series of extremely complicated seals with his hands. Then he shouted suddenly and spit out a piece of sand-like smoke from his mouth. This smoke spread quickly, covering Bai Mingyu. Mingyu and Izumi were enveloped, and at the same time, the pirate squatted down and pressed his hands on the ground. Earth escape ninjutsu. Something wrong flashed through his mind, and the earth and rocks under Bai Mingyu's feet suddenly collapsed. The next moment, several giant hands made of rocks poked out from the cracks in the soil and grabbed Bai Mingyu with the sound of breaking wind. This is... Bai Mingyu frowned. He didn't know why, but he felt something was wrong in his heart. However, at this critical moment, he had no intention of thinking about it any further. When the giant rock hand grabbed hold of him, he turned over and jumped up with Quan in his arms. His whole body looked like a bird. He jumped up in the air like a child, used the soles of his feet to step on one of the giant rock hands, and jumped out of the encirclement. However, the reaction speed of these giant rock hands was unexpected, and they grabbed it again without any lag. 4 giant hands surrounded Bai Mingyu from all directions. His forward momentum was blocked. Bai Mingyu had to stop and dodge in a small area. While avoiding these giant rock hands, he looked in the direction of Shinjia. Can we only deal with this person first before leaving? Then, quick decision. Bai Mingyu made a prompt decision, paused suddenly, and then jumped straight back. Under the violent stamping, the soil under his feet showed tiny cracks, and his whole body was like an arrow leaving the string, rushing towards Shinjia at lightning speed. Shoot in the direction. Hands up. Under such a fast momentum, Shinjia didn't even have time to react, and was split in half with a knife. Blood rushed everywhere like a fountain, dyeing half of Bai Mingyu's clothes red. The giant rock hand stopped. Bai Mingyu only hesitated for a moment, then rushed towards the sword-wielding samurai again. The latter raised his arm and swung his sword to block. The long sword and Soda Shirayuki collided with each other, causing a string of sparks. In a very short period of time, the two men clashed with their swords more than a dozen times. Finally, Bai Mingyu caught a gap and the sword slid down the samurai's strength, cutting off his entire left arm. The samurai was retreating. As he was retreating, Bai Mingyu caught up with him and cut him in two with a knife. Wrong. Something wrong. The thick blood splashed on his face, and the smell was extremely real, but Bai Mingyu had a strange feeling in his heart that became stronger and stronger, as if there was something crucial that he had ignored. Seeing several other pirates fleeing after seeing the blood, Bai Mingyu did not chase them, but quietly calmed down and carefully recalled what had just happened. Mr. Bai Yu. At this moment, Quan next to him suddenly woke up and pulled Bai Mingyu's sleeve. Well, you're awake. Bai Mingyu glanced back subconsciously. Quan looked like he had just woken up, with confusion in his eyes. He looked at Bai Mingyu with a confused face and murmured, "Where are we? Why did I faint just now? It's over." As he spoke, Quan reluctantly supported his body and tried to stand up, but his feet stumbled and he sat back on the ground. You were knocked unconscious by those pirates. You should still be very weak now. Don't force yourself. Bai Mingyu said, reaching out to pull Quan and help her stand up from the ground. At this moment, sudden change. Quan, who had just stood up, seemed to have accidentally fallen forward and fell into Bai Mingyu's arms. Just when Bai Mingyu wanted to reach out to help her, Quan suddenly took out a sharp dagger from his arms, and then aiming straight at Bai Mingyu's heart, he stabbed it. Life hanging by a thread. Pong. In reality, Quan's body fell heavily to the ground, he groaned, and his eyes opened a crack. But his mind was still groggy, and his thinking was obviously not clear yet. He opened his eyes and looked around with a confused look on his face. Where is this place, Mr. Bai Yu? In the eyes of the samurai, Shinjia and others, Bai Mingyu seemed to be suddenly stunned. The whole figure seemed to have been subjected to a body-fixing spell, his eyes lost focus, and he stood there blankly. Quan, who was originally held by him, fell down as a result. Instead, he gradually woke up because of the fall. Succeeded. This boy really can't resist the illusion. The corners of the warrior's mouth turned up with a sneer. He turned back to look at Shinjia and said, "Shinjia, you did a good job." The guy named Shinsuke was panting like an ox, as if he had just finished a 10-kilometer cross-country run. His face was covered with sweat. I have said that this illusion consumes chakra very much. I used to only use it once a day at most. Just now, I've already used it once when I caught this little girl. Now my chakra is completely overdrawn. I guess I won't be able to recover even after 3 or 5 days of rest. Hehe, if you had been easier just now, you would have killed him long ago. There is no use. So troublesome. It's fantasy. In fact, from the moment Bai Mingyu saw the puff of smoke spit out from Shinjia's mouth, what he saw was no longer real, but an illusion constructed by Shinjia. Through the special smoke that condenses chakra, once someone smells or comes into contact with it, they will immediately fall into the attack range of the illusion created by Shinsuke, and his 5 senses will be controlled by him. And because this kind of illusion is extremely accurate and more difficult to crack than ordinary illusions, it consumes a lot of money from Shinjia. When they had a previous encounter with Izumi and Uezuki Shion, Shinsuke used this method to trap the 2 girls, and with the help of his accomplices, they jointly knocked out Izumi and took away Izumi. But now, Shinjia used this illusion again to trap Bai Mingyu, who was almost exhausted from exhaustion. Stop talking nonsense, business matters. Deal with this kid and let's leave as soon as possible. The samurai said, pulling out the long sword from his waist and walking step by step towards Bai Mingyu, who was standing still. The blade was raised. The tip of the knife was aimed at the heart. The samurai took a deep breath and made a gesture of preparation. Then he stepped forward suddenly and stabbed out with the long knife. Do not. At the same time as Quan's shouting, the long and narrow samurai sword pierced Bai Mingyu's chest. At the last moment when the tip of the knife entered his body, Bai Mingyu's eyes suddenly returned to focus. Stimulated by the severe pain, his spirit was highly concentrated and he broke away from Shinjia's illusion. But it's too late. Only a dull sound was heard, as if something was torn apart. The samurai's long sword passed through Bai Mingyu's left chest, and then penetrated out from behind. Shockingly, his heart was pierced. Indescribable severe pain hit his whole body. Bai Mingyu woke up from the illusion in an instant, opened his mouth, and spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with internal organs fragments. He coughed violently uncontrollably, and every time he coughed, his whole body twitched. The pain was so painful that I almost lost consciousness. Tear. The warrior used another force and pulled out the long knife. More blood rushed out from Bai Mingyu's chest. Bai Mingyu staggered and his face turned pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. HMPH, so what about Konoha's ninjas? I will kill them without fail. The samurai snorted coldly, turned around and kicked Quan, lifted the girl up by her neck, and casually said to a few of his accomplices, "Let's go, get out of here quickly." Since people were killed, those Konoha ninjas I will definitely not give up. Bring a few other prisoners with us. We will go to the other side of the island and leave by boat. Hey, your eyes. Halfway through his words, the samurai suddenly stopped and noticed the gorgeous red color in Izumi's pupils. The shape of the black magatama was clearly visible, as if a ball of flame was burning. Mr. Bai Yu. Quan stared at Bai Mingyu's fallen figure, almost biting his silver teeth into pieces, and then suddenly turned his head to meet the samurai's eyes, with deep hatred in his eyes. I will definitely kill you and avenge Bai Yujun. Cut. The samurai was first startled by Izumi's eyes and hateful tone, then he snorted disdainfully and strode forward with Izumi in his arms. Your eyes are the legendary Uchiha clan of Konoha. Sharingan. So what if you have this kind of eye? Your hands and feet are trapped now, and your chakra is also imprisoned. How can you still escape from my hands? As he spoke, the warrior turned his head and urged, hurry up. Several pirates around picked up their weapons and followed. 1 step, 2 steps. When the pirates walked more than 10 meters, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded from behind, I told you where you want to go. Chapter 91. The samurai was stunned for a moment, as if he was trying to figure out where the sound came from. After a few seconds, he suddenly stopped and turned back suddenly, as if he realized something incredible. How is this possible? Just 10 seconds ago, he had already personally put the long knife into Bai Mingyu's heart. A penetrating injury of that level was definitely a fatal injury. As long as he was a human, he would definitely die. There was a 100% chance that he would not survive. The opportunity is now. This young man with his hands hanging in front of his knees and slowly standing up from the ground, who else could he be if he wasn't Bai Mingyu? Is it really a ghost? Fake corpse. Subconsciously, the samurai swallowed. Then, I felt a blur in front of my eyes. It seemed like something was shaking past him. Not only him, but everyone present, except Quan, who relied on his double Magatama Sharingan to see a little bit of the afterimage clearly. Everyone else only felt a slight wind blowing by, and then Bai Mingyu, who was standing there, lost his mind. No trace. It wasn't until a few seconds later that a pirate pointed to a place with a frightened face and shouted, "Ah, there he is." Several people looked at the same time. In the sight is the back of a young man, with a pair of cat-like ears on both sides of his head, his hands with extremely sharp-looking claws, and a lion's tail following behind him. This animal-like state that is close to the complete body is exactly the secret of the Taigu Lion King. The lion never dies. Even if the heart is pierced, it can heal itself and survive. At this moment, he seemed to be holding something in his hand. A bulging mass of red flesh was held in Bai Mingyu's palm and was still beating gently. It looked like someone's heart. The feeling of having your heart pierced is very painful. Bai Mingyu turned his head. A pair of pale gold vertical pupils were very eye-catching on his blood-stained face, then he grinned at the warrior and exerted a little force in his hand. The heart was crushed, slightly. This scene looked a bit horrifying. The warrior covered his now empty chest and reluctantly opened his mouth. Without saying a word, he fell on his back, his eyes wandered, and soon there was no sound. Silence. To be precise, no one dared to speak. Everyone, including Quan, was frightened by this horrific scene. It was already surprising that he still survived despite being fatally injured by having his heart penetrated. But now, Bai Mingyu, this appearance was very different from normal people. Coupled with the act of digging out the heart with one hand, it made them even lose the ability to think. Is that human being? This guy is a monster. I don't know who shouted first. All the pirates woke up from a dream and subconsciously wanted to escape. As soon as they turned around, Bai Mingyu looked over, picked up the long knife on the ground with his toes, then held it in his hand and threw it away. Shoo! The genjutsu ninja named Shinsuke had just taken 2 steps when he was shot from behind by the knife, piercing him directly. He staggered and fell to the ground, dying on the spot. When the other pirates saw this, they ran faster one by one. They only regretted that their parents had lost 2 legs. Bai Mingyu didn't chase after him. He turned around and locked the positions of the pirates one by one. Then he raised his hand to reach behind his back and slowly drew the knife. Shu Baishui clenched it in his palm, then put his hands together and lifted the tip of the knife. Stab hard into the ground. Tree white. Burst of cold air. Powerful cold air burst out from the blade, split into 4 or 5 strands, and quickly spread along the underground. It caught up with several pirates who wanted to escape, and then broke out of the ground. These people were wrapped and entangled by the cold air, and their whole bodies were quickly engulfed. Frozen, it suddenly turned into something like several ice sculptures. After doing all this, Bai Mingyu's aura suddenly vented, and he sat down on the ground. The half-beast features on his body faded at a speed visible to the naked eye. The penetrating wound to the heart had just healed, and the muscle tissue in the wound hadn't grown well yet, and blood was gurgling out. But Bai Mingyu no longer dares to continue to squeeze the power of the Lion King. The consumption of traveling before, coupled with the healing of the penetrating wound in his heart, has exhausted his physical strength. Bai Mingyu can now feel a drumming in his stomach, and the eyes are turning black. If he continues to maintain his half-animal state, he may soon faint like he did in the land of grass. Mr. Bai Yu. It was only now that Quan walked over cautiously, raised his hand nervously and waved it in front of Bai Mingyu, and asked tentatively, "Are you okay? Can you still recognize me?" The corner of Bai Mingyu's mouth twitched, and he smiled helplessly. His voice was very weak. "Stop making trouble, Quan, you go check around again to see if there are any fish that have slipped through the net. If another person jumps out now, the two of us will probably it's all going to be explained here." Hearing this, Quan patted his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. Yiyan walked around in a circle and used his Sharingan to observe the surrounding movements. After confirming that there was no ambush, he quickly walked back to Bai Mingyu. He couldn't help but look at Bai Mingyu's bleeding heart, his pretty face it was full of worry. "Bai Yujun, are you really okay? I just saw you being." Even now, Quan can't help but wonder if Bai Mingyu had a flashback before his death. After all, no matter how you think about it, there is absolutely no reason for ordinary people to survive if their hearts are pierced. Although it is not ruled out that some ninjas can use powerful secret techniques to prolong their lives, it is only temporarily prolonging their lives and lingering on their last breath. Quan was very worried that Bai Mingyu was in this state now. "Quan, please don't tell others what happened just now, okay?" Bai Mingyu took a deep breath, pulled himself together and said to Quan. As you saw just now, my physique is somewhat special and different from normal people. That's why I was able to survive in such a situation just now, and the wounds will heal at an abnormal speed. But I don't want to be changed about this matter. Many people know, so even if it's just a request from me, can you help me keep it a secret?" Bai Mingyu looked directly into Quan's eyes. In the situation just now, it was a last resort to expose his half-animal transformation ability, but since he was seen, he had to find a way to solve this problem. Those pirates didn't matter, just kill them, the dead would not reveal their secrets, but if Quan refused to agree, Bai Mingyu had no idea what to do. Okay, Quan hesitated for a while, then took a closer look at Bai Mingyu's chest, and found that the wound had really begun to heal, so he frowned, nodded in confusion, but then asked again. "Well, Mr. Baiyu, do you have some strange disease? There are many medical ninjas in the village who are highly skilled in medicine. I think you can try telling them about this matter. Maybe they can find a way to solve your abnormal physique if necessary. If you want to help, Shisui-sensei and Shikaku-sensei and I will also find ways to help you. I don't need it for the time being. Anyway, I haven't had any problems with my special constitution. Let's talk about it later if there is a problem." Bai Mingyu smiled, secretly heaving a sigh of relief. He knew Quan's temperament and was not a duplicitous girl. Since she agreed, she would definitely keep his secret, so at least for a short period of time, he didn't have to worry about his secret being revealed from her mouth. After all, the ability to transform into a half-animal is nothing in itself, but if you add the attribute of immortality, there is no guarantee that it will not attract the attention of some people with ulterior motives. With this sigh of relief, the pain in the whole body immediately swept over. Even though Bai Mingyu had a tough temper, he couldn't help but clench his palms and his teeth chattered. In fact, if he really wanted to recover, it would be easy to do so. As long as he ate the remaining half of the fairy beans, his injuries would recover immediately. But there was only half a fairy bean left, and Bai Mingyu was really reluctant to eat it. Anyway, the fatal injury to the heart has basically healed, and death is inevitable. However, this pain will probably last for a while. Bai Yu-kun, are you okay? Just hold on. Teacher Jisui and the others should be here soon. Quan saw it in his eyes, bit his lip and comforted her. No way, no one in their team knows medical ninjutsu, and even among the entire team that came to the country of water to take the Chunin exam, only one of them led the Jonin, and an Anbu ninja led by Shisui mastered medical treatment ninjutsu, so although Quan was very worried about Bai Mingyu's injuries, he could only be anxious at this time, and there was nothing he could do. Footsteps came from afar. Due to the serious injury, Bai Mingyu's reaction was slower than usual. After Quan warned him first, he heard the sound, and the two of them looked up. In the direction they came from, several figures were approaching rapidly. Bai Yu, Quan, are you okay? The figure flashed. Jesui's figure appeared in front of Bai Mingyu and Quan. He first looked around at the scene around him, especially when he noticed the ice sculptures and the corpse on the ground with the heart hollowed out. His face was slightly shocked. Then he lowered his head and looked at Bai Mingyu and Quan. You two are injured. No, it's Mr. Baiyu. He was injured by these pirates in order to save me. He was seriously injured. Brother Zishui, hurry up and save him. Quan begged. Hold on, the medical ninja will be here soon. Zishui turned his head and looked in the direction he came from. Soon, several figures chased after him. They were the two Anbu members who followed Zishui Shengdao to investigate information. One of them carried Azuki Xian on his back, and Jun Malu followed behind, looking at Bai Mingyu and Quan with unease in his eyes. White Wolf, I'm sorry to trouble you, hurry up and heal Bai Yu's injury. Anbu's medical ninja nodded, and motioned to Quan to help lay Bai Mingyu's body flat, then gathered green chakra with both hands, and gently pressed on his chest. It's a skin injury, and there's a lot of blood loss. The injury is lighter than expected. It may take some time to fully heal, but the emergency treatment will be completed soon. Let's wait until we get back to the ship for complete treatment. The medical ninja checked. After checking Bai Mingyu's injuries, he turned back and said to Zishui. The latter nodded and looked around the battlefield in sequence. It seems that there was a fierce battle just now. No wonder you were injured like this. Were all these pirates defeated by you and by you? No one was left alive. Forehead. Quan opened his mouth and subconsciously looked at Bai Mingyu. Bai Mingyu coughed, took a long breath, and reluctantly said, Teacher Jesui, the pirate's lair is right in front. About 3 kilometers to the south from here, there is a stone castle located in the valley. Is their home base? There may be others there. Is that so? Shisui thought for a moment, and quickly made an arrangement that the medical ninja and another Anbu would protect Bai Mingyu and the others here, while he went to the pirate base alone to inquire about the situation, and decided on the next move according to the specific situation. It didn't take long for Shisui to go. Just over 10 minutes later, he hurried back from the base. His Anbu clothes were clean and tidy, and he didn't look like he had fought with the enemy. The castle in front is already empty. The people inside should have noticed something and evacuated early. However, I suspect there should be a basement there, but I couldn't find the entrance for a while. The missing children may be inside. Jesui said to the other two Anbu men, the position has been basically determined. Let's launch the signal bomb first. White Wolf, you stay here and wait for Hayama's team to come over. Take care of White Feather and Izumi. Black Dog and I will enter the castle together. Search. I'm fine. I think I can hold on for a while. Hearing Zishui's arrangement, Bai Mingyu immediately supported his body with his hands and forcibly sat up. The last bronze treasure chest was still inside that stone castle, and he didn't want to look at it so helplessly. Anyway, in the eyes of others, his injuries were mostly skin trauma, not fatal. After the treatment of the medical ninja, his physical strength has recovered a little, at least simple walking is no problem. Quan, the only one who knew his true injury, opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but stopped talking. Quan, what's wrong? Nothing. Quan bit his lip, and helped Bai Mingyu stand up with Jun Malu. When Jesui saw this, he didn't ask any more questions. He took the lead with the Anbu named Black Dog to open the way. The group quickly arrived at the castle in the valley. Jesui and the others first checked it carefully to confirm that there were no ambush or detonating symbols. After the organization was set up, others were greeted to enter. Spread out and look for possible basement entrances. On Bai Mingyu's side, Quan and Junmalu followed him every step of the way. Shiryu-kun, you are injured, please take a rest first. Finding the entrance is enough for me and Kimimaro. As Quan said, he took out kunai and knocked against the walls and floors on both sides, reaching out his hands from time to grope in the cracks between the bricks and stones. Jun Malu also imitated Quan's actions, and took out his bone blade to poke at the bricks a few times, but his eyes frequently looked towards Bai Mingyu, as if he was worried about what happened to him. Suddenly, a stone that Quan was groping for came loose and made a slight creaking sound. The girl's eyes lit up and she became tense. There is something behind the wall here, be careful. As he spoke, Quan tentatively twisted the mechanism a few times with his hands, and a stone wall slowly moved to the side. Quan jumped back a few steps lightly, preparing to receive crossbow arrows or other hidden weapons that might appear, but when he saw clearly what was on the inside of the wall, he suddenly froze. This is an iron box. At a rough count, there are about 7 or 8, neatly stacked together. Judging from the size of the space on the inside of this wall, this should be a place similar to a storage room. Not only is the location hidden, but there are additional mechanisms, and it is unknown what exactly is being stored. Then, when Quan walked over and tentatively opened a box, Bai Mingyu and Kimimaro who followed behind him were stunned for a moment. This is. Inside the box are densely packed banknotes, and judging from the patterns on them, they are the common currencies of the 5 major countries. Moreover, there are quite a few. Isn't it possible that other boxes also contain these things? Bai Mingyu turned his head and looked to the side, casually broke the lock of another box, and opened the lid. It was also filled with a large amount of banknotes. There is so much money. If all these boxes are like this, it would add up to tens of millions of taels. Quan opened his mouth wide and murmured. Although she came from a wealthy family like the Uchiha clan, she had never seen so much money put together. To be precise, the net worth of most Konoha Junin was far less than that. Although the rewards for performing high-level tasks were relatively high, the expenses are also huge, and the money that can be saved is actually only a small part. Bai Mingyu was also a little distracted, but what he was thinking was, the total money in these boxes is probably enough to buy several asthma heads. These money should be the property of Cardo Company. They were unable to take them away because they were in a hurry to evacuate. Quan, tell teacher Shisui and the others what you found here. Well, I'll go right now. Quan responded and walked out quickly. Bai Mingyu sat down on an iron box, lowered his head to adjust his breathing, and placed his hands on the corner of the wall seemingly casually. There, a Qingtong treasure chest was emitting a dark green halo. Congratulations to the host for opening the bronze treasure chest and obtaining Sword Skill Secret Scroll X1, do you want to learn it? Swordsmanship Secret Scroll. Is it some kind of swordsmanship secret book? Bai Mingyu frowned slightly, glanced at Kimimaro who was sitting diagonally across from him quietly, and quietly glanced at the instructions on the scroll. After seeing this, he couldn't take his eyes away. Secret Scroll of Swordsmanship. A secret scroll passed down from generation to generation by the swordsmanship school Phaeton Yujianliu. It records the 3 moves of swordsmanship of that school. Sword moves, Dragon's Nest Flash, random attack, delivering continuous slashes to the opponent faster than the naked eye. You need to be at least level 6 of entry-level swordsmanship to learn it. Sword move 2 Dragon Hammer Flash. Use powerful jumping power to soar in front of the opponent, and make a fierce slash from top to bottom. You need to have entry-level swordsmanship level 7 or above to learn it. Sword move 3 Dragon Crying Flash. Sheath the sword at an extremely fast speed, generate ultrasonic waves, and destroy the 3 semicircular canals in the opponent's ears. You need to be at level 8 or above of entry-level swordsmanship to learn it. It turns out to be a swordsmanship scroll of the Phaeton Mitsurugi style. Bai Mingyu took a slight breath, and his heart was wandering. He was increasingly feeling that the entry-level swordsmanship was of little use to him. He had already planned to find a way to learn Konoha-style swordsmanship from Uazuki Shion after returning to the village. I didn't expect that something like a swordsmanship scroll would be found in this bronze treasure box. Although Soda Shirayuki is a sword, the principles of swordsmanship and swordsmanship are the same, and swordsmanship can also be used with it. As for the sword moves of the hidden Mitsurugi style, even if they are not as profound as Tiansho Dragon Flash, they will definitely not be weaker than Azuki Yugao's Konoha-style swordsmanship. It's just that the threshold for learning is a bit high. With my current level of swordsmanship, I can only learn the first sword move, Dragon's Nest Flash. I should wait until the current situation is resolved and then return to the ship and study it slowly. On the other side, Jisui and 2 Anbu ninjas successfully found the entrance to the basement after searching around, and rescued Nobu and Mia-aya, who had been kidnapped by pirates before, as well as the merchant ship owner Kiki, son Bucky. When they followed Quan to the dark room inside the wall, they all opened their eyes in surprise. Teacher Jisui, what should I do with the money? I'm afraid it adds up to tens of millions of taels. Quan looked back at Jisui. Shisui touched his chin and thought for a moment. These may have been plundered from the people of the Kingdom of Waves. Let's not move around for the time being. Let's deal with it after asking for details. Black Dog, hurry up and get on the boat. Tell Master Shikaku about the situation here and ask him to make a decision. After that, Nara Shikaku, Shisui and others took over. Anyway, whether these tens of millions of taels are returned to the people of Wave Country or used as a reward for hiring Konoha ninjas to carry out rescue operations and drive away the pirates, they will not be distributed to genin like Bai Mingyu. After returning to the village after the mission, some of the money will be taken out and given to them as rewards. However, judging from Shisui's next actions, it seems that they have no intention of continuing to struggle with this matter. The pirate gang was defeated and the kidnapped genin and hostages were rescued. This mission was considered complete. As for what's next, although judging from various signs of the matter, behind the rampant behavior of this group of pirates, many clues point to the Cardo Company, but they rashly made an enemy of such a world-class conglomerate without openly showing off, is not a wise choice. Therefore, after staying in the country of waves for 2 days, the examination team from Konoha took the task reward of 10 million taels and returned the remaining silver taels to the country of waves before embarking on the return journey. Tatsuna, these Konoha ninjas are in your hands. In front of the port heading to the land of fire, Boss Kiki was talking to a tall, middle-aged man. The man looked to be in his 40s or 50s, with an unshaven beard and a straw hat. He laughed a few times and said, "Don't worry, I have been an old boatman for many years. I will definitely be able to deliver them safely." The other side. With that said, Dazuna jumped on the fishing boat, raised his hand and greeted Nara Shikaku, Bai Mingyu and others on the shore. "Let's go, get on the boat quickly, I will send you back home." "Then trouble you." Nara Shikaku bowed and thanked him, then turned to the others and said, "Get on the boat." Different from when we came here, the fishing boat we came back was large enough to carry everyone in the Konoha team at once. After Shisui was the last one to board the boat, Dazuna directed Bucky and another young man to start the engine. The fishing boat broke through the waves and sailed into the sea with a whine. Quan stood on the deck blowing the sea breeze. Bai Mingyu was sitting next to him, looking thoughtfully at Dazuna who was standing on the bow of the ship directing others to turn the sails. "Mr. Bai Yu, what are you looking at? Is there anything wrong with that person?" "It's nothing." Bai Mingyu shook his head. Although the Cardo Company used pirates and gangs to attack and kill the fishermen of the country of waves, and then monopolized shipping by acquiring fishing boats, the plan failed. But since the Cardo Company is still there, the country of waves will probably encounter the same situation as the original novel sooner or later. The same thing happened. Maybe one day in the future, this old man named Dazuna will go to Konoha again to hire Team 7 because of the construction of the bridge. I always feel like I'm doomed. Bai Mingyu smiled, put aside these endless thoughts, and said to Dazuna casually, "Uncle, if you encounter any trouble in the Kingdom of Waves in the future, please come to Konoha village for help." Dazuna looked at Bai Mingyu with some confusion, but after Bai Mingyu said this, he said nothing more and turned back to the cabin. A few days later, mobile version M. Leaf Village. Hokage Building. All the reports on this trip to the Kingdom of Water are here. Please take a look at them, Mr. Third Generation. In the Hokage's office, Nara Shikaku and Sharon Hayama stood with their hands hanging, and behind them stood Uchiha Shisui and several other Anbu members who were traveling with them. After handing the report to the table, the several shinobi remained silent and waited to sit at the desk. The old man in front spoke. An hour ago, the team that went to the Land of Water to take the ninja exam had just returned to the village from the entrance of Konoha village, and then immediately came to the Hokage building with the report. The important information about civil strife in Kurigakure village must be reported to the third Hokage as soon as possible. Quiet. There was only the sound of scrolls being turned. After a while, the third generation stopped moving in his hand, took a few heavy puffs on the pipe in his mouth, and said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect that so many things would happen to you when you went to take the ninja exam this time. The Kagaya clan, the Hekadang clan actually chose to launch a rebellion against Kurigakure at this time. This is really a rare big move. Several other countries should also have received this news, right?" "Yes, for this ninja exam held in Kurigakure village, both the Kingdom of Wind and the Kingdom of Earth sent participating teams. Now their teams should have returned to their home countries and informed the Kazekage and Tsuchikage of the information. As for the Thunder Country, although they did not participate this time, if there is such a big commotion in Kurigakure village, it will not take long for it to reach their ears. Nara Shikaku replied. The third generation nodded slightly and tapped his fingers on the table, seeming to be thinking about something. The Third Ninja World War has just ended. Each of the 5 major nations, including ours in Konoha, has suffered damage. It is difficult to launch another large-scale war in a short time. However, the civil strife that has just occurred in Kurigakure village will definitely have a negative impact on the Kingdom of Water. The situation has caused some turmoil, and perhaps we can use this opportunity to try to gain some benefits for Konoha. After thinking secretly for a moment, Sandai looked through the scroll again, and his eyes fell on one place. Shikaku, when you came back from the Kingdom of Water, did you bring back a child? Yes. Nara Shikaku nodded and replied. The child's name is Kimimaro. He is a descendant of the Kagaya clan, and now he is the only remaining member of the Kagaya clan. We happened to meet him, so I took him on my own initiative. Came back. Sandai narrowed his eyes slightly and pondered silently. As an older generation of ninjas who have lived from the early days of Konoha to the present, everyone present knows the history of the Kagaya clan and what this surname represents. In the past, the first Hokage had not yet established Konoha village. During the Warring States period, the Kagaya clan was a clan with strong fighting power. Even if they were not the 2 top clans, Senju and Uchiha, they were not much different. Families such as Hinata, Sarutobi, and Nara were in front of them. All 3 points must be avoided. It's a pity that the ninjas of this clan have strength but no brains. During the Warring States period, their clan was certainly very powerful. With the powerful ability of the bloodline of the corpse vein, they were invincible in battle and made many small clans frightened. However, after the formation of the 5 major countries, they gradually failed to keep up with the times and were eliminated by history. Until now, it can only be said that he has made such a foolish move as to start a war with the heavily guarded Kurigakure village. About this child, you should block the news first and don't make any announcements at will, so as not to leave a source of gossip to Kurigakure village. As for the child named Kimimaro, let him be placed in Sarutobi. Just as Sandai was mid-sentence, the sound of a door opening suddenly interrupted, and the hoarse voice that followed interrupted his words. Several eyes in the room looked out the door. I saw the door to the Hokage's office being pushed open from the outside, and an old man wearing a gray kimono slowly walked in with a cane and said word by word, I have heard what you discussed outside. This child of the Kagaya clan is the safest only if it is left to me. At the root, his talents will be fully grown, and I will be responsible for completely transforming him into an excellent Konoha ninja. Danzo, you. The third generation raised his head and met Danzo's eyes, frowning. As a teammate and partner for many years, Sandai is the person who knows Danzo best. He could hear Danzo's tone that he was determined to win. But, are we really going to hand over the children of the Kagaya clan to the hands of Nibi? Back in time a few minutes ago. Downstairs of the Hokage building. Bai Mingyu, Izumi, Azuki Shion and others stood in front of the pillars downstairs. The warm sunlight fell through the leaves from above, casting mottled light and shadow on the ground. Mr. Bai Yu, we shouldn't have anything to do here, right? Everyone in the other classes has gone back. Quan Bai played with his hair boredly, glanced at Bai Mingyu, and asked casually. Anyway, we've been waiting for so long. Let's wait a little longer. Teacher Shikaku and the others should have finished discussing it soon. Bai Mingyu responded lightly, looking not far ahead. Kimimaro was standing on the steps. He used his hands to form a pergola to cover his forehead, raised his head to face the sunlight falling from the sky, and looked at the surrounding scenery with good eyes. In fact, it stands to reason that they can go back now. After returning from the Kingdom of Water, all that was left was for Nara Shikaku and others to submit a mission report to the third Hokage, and the third Hokage would review it and give a reply. Because the ninja exam in Kurigakure village was forced to stop, there was no winner in this exam. Neither Bai Mingyu nor Quan was qualified to be promoted to ninja. But that doesn't mean they can't be promoted to shinobi. Like the original ninja exam in which the 12 strong, Gaara and others participated, although Naruto, Shino and others won in the finals, those who were finally promoted to ninja chose to admit defeat at the right time in the game and then assisted Sasuke later. Shikamaru performed well as a team leader on a temporary mission. Therefore, who can be promoted and who cannot be promoted is actually a matter of shadow. As long as one village shadow thinks he can be promoted, everything else won't be a problem. Bai Mingyu didn't care whether he could be promoted to nin. He, Quan and others were waiting here entirely because of Kimimaro. I wonder what arrangements the third generation will make for Kimimaro, the orphan of the Kagaya clan. It seems like someone is coming. Mao Yuxian looked forward and suddenly reminded her. Hearing this, Bai Mingyu and Quan followed her gaze and saw an old man walking slowly on the road in front of the Hokage building, followed by two ninjas who seemed to be guarding him. He looked familiar. It's Danzo. Bai Mingyu was shocked when he suddenly saw Danzo. However, Danzo seemed not to notice him at all, as well as Izumi and Azuki Shion next to him. He slowly walked past a few people with his eyes narrowed, and stepped into the Hokage building without squinting. On the contrary, the other two rude ninjas who followed him glanced at Bai Mingyu with a cold look, and then quickly followed Danzo's footsteps. Is this someone I've met before? Bai Mingyu squinted his eyes slightly and glanced at Danzo's leaving figure. No matter where the rude ninja appears, he always wears a mask, so he is not sure whether the two ninjas following Danzo are the ones he has seen before in the Roots underground stronghold. However, judging from their behavior, it was obvious that their attitude towards him was not friendly and there was an inexplicable hostility. Hey, Mr. Bai Yu. Quan touched Bai Mingyu with his arm and asked quietly, who was that person who passed by just now? He looked a little weird and gloomy. Because the scope of Danzo's activities is mainly concentrated behind the scenes, and he rarely appears in front of the villagers of Konoha village like the third Hokage, so the people who know him are almost only the ninjas and ninjas in the village. Many civilians, as well as genin like Izumi who had not been a ninja for a long time, had almost never seen him, so they did not know Danzo's identity. But these people did not include Azuki Shion. At this moment, the purple-haired girl was silently watching Danzo's back disappear at the top of the stairs, looking thoughtful. It's Mr. Danzo Shimura. His current position in the village is that of Hokage's assistant, and he is also the leader of the Anbu and the Roots. Bai Mingyu replied. Roots? Quan opened his eyes in confusion. She had heard of the Anbu. The guard was directly under the Hokage and was responsible for handling various secret tasks inside and outside the village. In a sense, its functions were similar to the Konoha security brigade of the Uchiha clan. But the name Genbu was very unfamiliar to her. This was the first time she heard it. It is another department parallel to the Anbu. It is responsible for handling some matters inside and outside the village. However, its style of conduct is more ruthless and it only obeys the orders of Danzo-sama. Even the Hokage has no right to interfere with its internal affairs. Bai Mingyu said, feeling vaguely uneasy in his heart. Danzo suddenly came over at this time. What did he want to do? Although there was no verbal communication, intuitively, he instinctively felt that this guy had bad intentions when he came. Or to be more precise, Danzo would do nothing good if he showed up, and he might be trying to cause some trouble this time. Is it because of the previous invitation? When he returned to the village after the Sihugo incident, Bai Mingyu was brought to Danzo by the Root Ninja and was invited by the latter to join the Root. However, the conversation was interrupted by Kakashi who came with the Hokage's warrant. That incident the matter was settled, and Danzo never looked for him again. But with Danzo's character and methods, if he sees something clearly, he probably won't give up so easily. Maybe he will raise the matter with the third generation in person this time. Of course, it may be that Bai Mingyu is overly worried. Danzo's target this time is not him, but someone else, such as. It's Kimimaro. When his eyes swept over Kimimaro, Bai Mingyu's pupils shrank, and he vaguely realized something in his heart. Kimimaro seemed to feel the gaze behind him, and looked back in surprise, then trotted over and shouted a little nervously, Sir Bai Yu. About 10 days passed between leaving the country of water and returning to Konoha village. During this time, Kimimaro and Bai Mingyu's team got along day and night, and their dependence on them became more and more obvious. This is not the first time something like this has been said. I told you not to call me that. I'm only a year or two older than you. The corner of Bai Mingyu's mouth twitched slightly. Every time Kimimaro called him like this, he felt like he was calling Lord Orochimaru, which made him feel weird. Quan puffed up his cheeks and snorted dissatisfiedly and said, Really, Kimimaro, we obviously brought you back from the Kingdom of Water. Why do you only have so much respect for Baiyu-kun? Sister Shion and I also care about you very much. Kimimaro hesitated for a moment, then tentatively shouted, Izumi-sama. Forget it. You should just call me Sister Kwan like before. Kwan felt a little awkward and was about to say something else when a burst of footsteps came from behind. Several people looked back, but it was Shisui and several other Anbu who walked out of the Hokage building. When passing by the steps, Shisui said something to the people around him, and the other Anbu quickly left the Hokage building, used the instant body technique to leave, while Shisui stopped to say hello to Bai Mingyu and Quan. Bai Yu, Quan Shang, Shi Yan, you guys haven't gone back yet. Shisui said with a smile. It just so happened that Hokage-sama mentioned you just now and admired your performance in Kurigakure village. Shisui-sensei. Bai Mingyu raised his head and glanced at the Hokage tower, and asked in a low voice impatiently, well, we seem to have seen Lord Danzo go just now. Lord Danzo, does he have something to discuss with Lord Hokage? Okay. Shisui was startled for a moment, and quickly replied, oh, that's the case. Just now, Lord Danzo asked Lord Hokage to transfer Kimimaro to the Anbu training under his leadership. The Sandaime is discussing with him. What? Before Zishui finished speaking, Bai Mingyu and Quan's hearts trembled. Fortunately, Izumi said that all she knew about Danzo was this person, but Bai Mingyu knew where the roots were. Normal people would be brainwashed into murder tools if they entered. If a newcomer like Kimimaro entered with a blank slate, I'm afraid he will be completely brainwashed in a few days, and the situation with Orochimaru will be even worse. What did Shikaku-sensei say? Bai Mingyu looked at Shisui. Mr. Shikaku didn't say anything. Are you worried about Kimimaro? In fact, as far as I know, Lord Danzo is also a very powerful ninja, and his Anbu has a complete training system. Giving Maro to him may be a good choice for the child's future growth. Shisui smiled and said. Quote. Is it a good choice to have both eyes gouged out? To be honest, Bai Mingyu doesn't know Shisui's true views on Danzo. Perhaps for these family heirs who grew up in Konoha village, joining Gen is not as bad as they imagined, no matter how harsh and unkind Danzo is. Being close to human beings, for the sake of the family they belong to, they dare not make fun of their lives casually. But the premise is that there is family support. If you are an orphan or a commoner child without a supporter, and you are brought to the root, your situation will be difficult to say. The most likely situation is that your own value will be squeezed out, and you will not even know how to die in the end. Not to mention that Kimimaro came from another village, the only survivor after the entire clan was wiped out. Teacher Shisui, is there any room for maneuver in this matter? Bai Mingyu thought for a while and asked, I want to see the third generation. There are some things I want to discuss with him in person. 5 minutes later, Bai Mingyu, along with Quan and Uoyuki Shion, followed Shisui to the Hokage's office. Kimimaro followed. In the office, Sandai was sitting behind the desk, with Nara Shikaku standing in front of him, while Danzo and his 2 root guards were standing on the other side. When they heard the door open, several eyes came over, with a slightly cold taste. The third generation raised his head with a smile, looked at a few people and said, Baiyu, Quan, Shiyan, you came just in time. I was discussing your matters with Shikaku before. This time, the ninja exam in Kurigakure village was due to unexpected circumstances. I know you must be unwilling to stop the journey. Judging from the report, you all performed very well in the exam, so after discussing with Lu Ju, I decided to give you a chance to prove yourself again. What's the meaning? Bai Mingyu and the 2 girls looked at each other. Sandai's words were beyond their expectations, and they temporarily swallowed what they originally wanted to say. Look at this. The third generation took out a scroll from the pile of scrolls next to his right hand and placed it on his desk. This B-level task will serve as your ninja assessment standard. Based on your completion of the task and the performance of the process, I and the people in the village will discuss and decide whether to grant you the qualification to be promoted to ninja. In addition, the village will dispatch an experienced ninja to join your team to assist you in completing this mission. However, all operational arrangements for the mission will be decided by you. Shikaku will not participate in it. The ninja who assisted you will contact you later. Bai Mingyu and the three of them glanced at Nara Shikaku in unison, who nodded slightly. That's it, Bai Yu will be the captain of this mission for the time being, and all action arrangements will be decided by you. This may also be the last time you work together before you become shinobu. Mission accomplished. I see. Bai Mingyu took the scroll, glanced at the ceiling line on it, and put it in his arms. After hesitating for a moment, he glanced at the gloomy Danzo next to him with his peripheral vision, looked at the third generation and said, Hokage-sama, I want to talk to you about Kimimaro. Oh, Sandai raised his head. Danzo also looked over at the same time, with a gloomy look in his eyes. Bai Mingyu organized his words and said, do you know about the blood disease unique to the Kagaya clan? Evening. It's here. In front of a house on East Street, Bai Mingyu stopped and turned back to Kimimaro. 2 hours ago, he made it clear to the third generation in his office that the disease was inherited from the corpse's veins and blood, and after racking his brains to persuade him, the third generation relaxed his decision. In fact, according to the original intention of the third generation, Kimimaro did not intend to train Kimimaro in a normal way. After all, Kimimaro's identity is special. He is a descendant of the Kagaya clan. When the Kagaya clan raised a flag to rebel and was wiped out by everyone in the Kurigakure village, he was brought back from the Kurigakure village by Konoha's ninja examination team. Once this happens, this matter was exposed, and the people of Kurigakure discovered his identity. It is conceivable that it would cause endless trouble for Konoha. But the third generation was not initially prepared to hand over Kimimaro to Danzo. His original intention was to place Kimimaro in the Anbu directly under the Hokage for training. The potential of the corpse veins is so amazing. Once that power is developed, even a part of it will be enough for Kimimaro to quickly become a powerful assassin in a short period of time, and can be used as the sharpest dagger. But since Danzo took the initiative to ask for someone, as a good friend for many years, the third generation had to think carefully. If Bai Mingyu and Izumi had not appeared, the third generation would have almost agreed to Danzo. However, after learning about the blood disease of the Kagaya clan, the third generation changed his mind. Is that so? It turns out that there are hidden dangers in the boundary of blood inheritance such as corpse bone veins. If this is the case, let's postpone cultivating him for now and let Konoha Hospital conduct a comprehensive examination and treatment on him. After the examination results are available, let's think about it further. Bai Yu, you and this child are both from Kurigakure village, and can be considered half of the same race. For the time being, arrange his residence near you and Shanglu's residence so that you can take care of each other. If this child's blood disease is really if you have an attack like you said, tell me the situation immediately and I will make appropriate arrangements. When the third generation said this, Danzo's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Although Bai Mingyu still wanted to persist, he also knew that this was the best result and asked Danzo to take him away immediately, which would at least delay it for a while. As for later, even if he joins the Anbu directly under the Hokage, it would be much better to join Danzo's subordinates. That night, Bai Mingyu helped Kimimaro tidy up the room, and then went to Xiangling's house. After roughly telling Kimimaro's situation to her mother and daughter, Uzumaki Miya felt pity for this child who, like her mother and daughter, had suffered the same pain of genocide and had become an orphan of the clan, and she simply agreed to take Jun Maro coming over for dinner as just an extra pair of chopsticks on the table. While eating, Uzumaki Miya frequently put meat and vegetables into Kimimaro's bowl. Thank you, Auntie. Kimimaro said it a bit harshly. He had been locked in a dungeon by his tribe since he was a child, and he was not used to accepting kindness from others. You're welcome. Uzumaki Miya took a chopstick to Bai Mingyu, and asked casually, Bai Yu, when you come back from your mission to the Kingdom of Water this time, you should be able to rest in the village for a few more days. Well, I can rest for about a week, and then I have a new task to perform. Mobile version M. Bai Mingyu swallowed the rice and replied. Bai Mingyu hasn't taken a closer look at the ninja test mission assigned to their team by the third generation, but since it is a B-level mission, it must be quite difficult. Really, brother Bai Yu, come and play with me tomorrow. Shang Phosphorus's eyes lit up. No, I'm going to the library to borrow books tomorrow. Let's talk about it next time when I have time. Bai Mingyu glanced at Kimimaro next to him and said to Xiangling, Kimimaro just came to Konoha and is unfamiliar with the place. If you have time, take him to get familiar with the environment of the village and get him to know the way. If you have time, you can also call Naruto. Lord Bai Yu. Kimimaro was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at Bai Mingyu. For him who is seriously insecure mentally, both Kosovo and Uzumaki Miya are undoubtedly strangers. Obedient. Bai Mingyu smiled like a child, but his brows furrowed silently. Kimimaro is still in an extremely immature stage of mind. Whether he joins the Roots or the Anbu, there are great hidden dangers, unless he is handed over to Gigi. Led by Shui or Kakashi, under the influence of these two people, he may be able to grow normally like other children to a certain extent. Or, do you really want me to join the Anbu myself? With Bai Mingyu's current strength, as long as he successfully completes the ninja assessment task, it is not a big problem to simply join the Anbu, but if he wants to achieve the position of Anbu captain like Shisui or Kakashi, there is something lacking. But if you are not in that position, it will be difficult to have enough voice to make requests to the third generation. It can only be discussed in the long run. Bai Mingyu breathed a long sigh of relief. His eyes swept away from the devil's essence in his backpack, and then looked at the newly learned sword skills in the skill bar. No matter what, the first priority is to improve your strength as much as possible. Early the next morning, after breakfast, Xiangling took Kimimaro out to find the way. Bai Mingyu watched the two children disappear on one side of the street before turning around and walking to the other side. Leaf Library. Compared with other public places in the village, this place is very deserted, because ordinary civilians do not have a high demand for books, and ninjas often only come here when they encounter special tasks and need to check relevant information, so when Mingyu found this place, there was almost no one in the entire library hall. I walked in and walked around, my eyes fixed on a row of bookshelves with historical symbols of the ninja world. Information about the kingdom of Yu. Bai Mingyu looked at each bookshelf from shelf to shelf. That's right, the purpose of his trip here was to find clues about the kingdom of Yu. Mao Yuxian said that the pattern on the stone surface from the bottom of the big lake in Wuyin village was very much like a fragment of a map. Bai Mingyu himself also had this idea, so he came here because he wanted to consult it. The information clearly investigates its origin. If the stone surface is really a map, then maybe we can find an unexpected surprise. There is. After browsing for a while, Bai Mingyu locked his sight in front of a row of bookshelves, took out a book from it and flipped through it. As he was looking at it, an old voice came from the side. Young man, do you also have a sense of the history of the Warring States period? Interest. Okay. Bai Mingyu looked back, but there was an old man with gray hair standing next to him, looking like he was also looking for a book. Ah, yes, after all, this is the era that the first Hokage and the others experienced. As a story, it is still very attractive. Bai Mingyu said casually. Really? The old man smiled honestly and glanced at the cover of Bai Mingyushu's book, The Kingdom of Yu. Speaking of which, I have been to this country once when I was young. It was already 50 years ago. At that time, I had just become a genin, and together with others, I followed the second generation master, who had not yet become the Hokage, to perform a mission near the country of Whirlpool. I once saw an ancient ruins of the country of Control, and the scenery was really spectacular. 50 years ago, the second generation. Hokage. Bai Mingyu opened his mouth, but his mind was a little unresponsive. The old man had already pulled out another book from the bookshelf. Bai Mingyu took the opportunity to glance at it. On the title page, the words, The Country of Craftsmen, were clearly written. Grandpa, do you want to go to the land of craftsmen? Well, I went there once before when I was on a mission with the third generation, but it has been many years. It happened that there was another mission recently that required me to go there, so I came here to check the information and recall it. The old man flipped through the pages of the book. While answering. 3 generations. Since he became a ninja 50 years ago, it is easy to understand that he will perform missions with the third generation, but the profession of ninja, which is always accompanied by danger, has been able to work safely for 50 years. This old man is probably not a simple person. After waving hello, Bai Mingyu returned to the counter with a few selected books. Please help me with the borrowing procedures. After registering his ninja number, Bai Mingyu turned around and left, planning to carefully study the relevant clues about the kingdom of Yu after returning home. While passing through a street, I suddenly heard a loud noise, two of which sounded familiar. This voice seems to be that of Karen and Naruto. Bai Mingyu paused, followed the sound to identify it, jumped up, climbed to the roof gently and deftly, jumped a few times quickly between the houses, and arrived at the roof of a house. Looking down from the roof, there is a relatively wide open space covered by trees. A group of children were divided into two groups and were pushing each other. Bai Mingyu glanced over and quickly caught a few familiar figures. The little golden figure was clearly Naruto, whom he had not seen for many days, and what stood in front of him was a man with fiery red hair. She was supposed to be standing aside with Kimimaro, who was familiar with the environment of Konoha village, watching everything in front of him silently. Shang Phosphorus, do you really want to take care of this matter? The child standing opposite Shang Lian and Naruto, a child who looked like the leader, folded his arms and snorted, my brother is a genin in the village. If you and this kid don't apologize to us honestly, I'll call my brother over and beat you until your heads are bloody. Not to be outdone, Shang Ling snorted and said angrily, a bunch of cowards, how can so many people beat one person? I'll put it here, if you dare to touch Naruto again, don't even think about it. Get off the street. Quote. It turns out that Shang Phosphorus behaves so domineeringly in front of his peers. Bai Mingyu looked at this little red-haired girl who was completely opposite to her usual behavior in front of him, raised the corners of his mouth, and his eyes fell behind her and Kimimaro. Naruto now looked bruised and swollen, and his body was covered in dirty dust. It was obviously not like he had fallen out by himself. Next to him, there was a little Lolita wearing a white kimono, who was supporting Naruto with an apologetic and uneasy look on her face. That is, Bai Mingyu was stunned for a moment, and then took another look at the scene below, and couldn't help but laugh. It turns out that in the original story, Hinata was bullied, and Naruto jumped out to save the beauty as a hero. Did it happen at this time? But this time there is more Phosphorus. And Kimimaro, it's a bit interesting. In just a few minutes, the situation of the confrontation has taken a new turn. Mobile version M. Shang Ling's tit-for-tat confrontation obviously made the lead child feel very humiliated. He immediately put his hands together into a trumpet shape and shouted at the top of his lungs towards a nearby house. As soon as the window of the building opened, a genin who looked like 13 or 14 years old and wore a Konoha forehead protector looked out, then turned over and jumped down from the second floor. What's going on? You guys ganged up to bully my brother. This is obviously being biased. No matter how you look at it, Shang Ling and Naruto are the ones who are the least bullied. Obviously you were the first. Shang Lu wanted to explain. How dare you make excuses? The genin interrupted Shang Ling directly, rolled up his sleeves, and walked over fiercely. Shang Ling swallowed and subconsciously took 2 steps back. Facing her opponent who was 2 heads taller, the little girl was still a little scared. Kimimaro looked at the genin and then at the genin. He seemed to understand something and slowly put his hand on his shoulder. A section of white bone stubble poked out of his head, pushing up a tiny piece of clothing. Bulge. Bai Mingyu could clearly see these subtle changes, but several people present were unaware of them. Seeing the surrounding atmosphere gradually becoming tense, a conflict was about to break out. A leaf falls. The light and shadow cast by the sun changed. The next second, the genin shouted and raised his fist. Kimimaro had already pulled out a small part of the bone blade on his shoulder. Seeing that a conflict was about to break out, Bai Mingyu's figure suddenly appeared in front of Shang Ling without any warning. One hand firmly held the genin's wrist, and the other hand firmly pressed Kimimaro's right hand that wanted to pull out the bone blade, and said calmly, for now, stop it. Quote. Bai Mingyu's sudden appearance was beyond everyone's expectations. Both Shang Ling and Naruto were stunned for a moment and did not react. Only Kimimaro's pupils shrank, and he recognized the identity of the speaker from the voice, and he retracted his bones obediently. The genin on the opposite side showed an angry look on his face after the initial shock. He struggled and shouted, "Kid, who are you? You dare to yell at me? Don't you know that I am a ninja in the village?" Ninja. Bai Mingyu smiled and looked at the genin calmly. As a ninja, does it feel satisfying to bully a few children who have never even passed ninja school? How about letting me be your opponent? If you have the guts to take action. You think I'm trying to scare you? In the middle of the sentence, the genin suddenly met Bai Mingyu's eyes. Under the sharp gaze of a knife, he suddenly felt guilty and short of breath. He swallowed and said with difficulty, forget it, just wait for me. I'll take note of this account first. Although he was a genin and Bai Mingyu was also a genin, the gap between the two was like a chasm. Not to mention the trump cards that Bai Mingyu has, if he uses them all, his strength can completely match that of elite nin, and it is even possible to win in battle. Even though he was also a genin, Bai Mingyu had actually performed ninja missions and had killed people and seen blood. Based on this alone, these ordinary genin who hunt cats and dogs in the village can't compare. So just being frightened by his momentum, the genin had already lost the courage to continue taking action. After saying harsh words, the genin took a few steps back, turned around and hurriedly waved his brother away. Although the other children didn't understand why, the leader all left. After looking at each other for a while, they also dispersed. It was only then that Xiangling patted her chest and breathed a sigh of relief, shouting crisply, "Brother Bai Yu. Don't smile at me." Bai Mingyu turned around and poked Xiang Phosphorus' head with 2 fingers. The smile on his face subsided and he said with a straight face, "Next time, don't show off so casually. If you encounter when there are many people on the opposite side, you should run away. If a fight really breaks out, do you think you can beat a genin who has studied taijutsu for 6 years? And you, Kimimaro, don't pull out bones casually in the village. If someone sees it, it will cause endless trouble." Kimimaro was stunned for a moment, and quickly responded honestly, "Yes, I remember it, Lord Bai Yu." After teaching the 2 children, Bai Mingyu looked at Naruto and Hinata behind him. At this moment, Naruto naturally looked miserable, while Hinata looked at Bai Mingyu with a pair of pure white eyes, and opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something. "Do you still recognize me?" Bai Mingyu said. "Well, half a year ago, you saved me that time. I still remember," Hinata said timidly in a voice as light as a mosquito's fly. "I'm sorry that I never formally thanked you." "Thank you very much." Hinata's character has indeed been like this since childhood. Bai Mingyu looked at the white-eyed little loli in front of him who was obviously taller than half a year ago. He followed the latter to look at Naruto with a bruised nose and swollen face. Hinata twisted her hands and fingers together and said to Naruto in a somewhat sarcastic manner, "Well, and you? Thank you for coming to save me just now. My name is Hinata. I didn't know you." "Ah, my name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I am the man who wants to become Hokage." Naruto was originally beaten so hard that he couldn't even open his eyes, but when he heard someone ask his name, he still managed to stand up, grinning with a silly smile and 8 shining teeth. Hokage. Hinata was startled by these bold words, and when she was about to say something else, 2 figures jumped out from not far away. Miss Hinata." The 2 people who appeared here also had a pair of white pupils. Without asking, you knew they were members of the Hyuga clan. One of them helped Hinata pat the dust on her clothes, and the other turned to Bai Mingyu and said, "Thank you for your help. Help us save Miss Hinata, but we must go back first and say goodbye." After saying that, the 2 Hyuga clan members bowed and thanked Bai Mingyu, escorted Hinata from the left to the right, turned and walked towards the direction of the Hyuga clan station. During this period, Hinata frequently looked back, somewhat reluctantly. "Ha." Bai Mingyu looked at the 2 Hyuga clan members with a sneer on his face. "Are you from the Hyuga clan? It seems that they are no different from most other people in Konoha village." If the 2 of them didn't see Hinata being bullied, no one would believe it. Since they are members of the Hyuga clan who are assigned to protect Hinata personally, and they have the Byakugan with superb clairvoyance ability, these 2 Hyuga clan members must have seen what happened. It passed completely, but he had not appeared before. It was not until Naruto and Hinata talked that he suddenly jumped out. The reason is obvious. It's just that she didn't want Hinata to come into contact with Naruto, the incarnation of the demon fox. Bai Mingyu could understand this approach, but he just thought it was ironic. He is obviously the son of a hero, but he is shunned like a snake. 3-inch world. Yanshingshu. If Kaoru and Kimimaro weren't here and he happened to pass by, I'm afraid Naruto's end today wouldn't be much better, at least he wouldn't be able to escape a severe beating. "Naruto, are you alright?" Xiangling had already helped Naruto up, took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the bruises on his face, and said with an unhappy face, "It's true that those guys, so many people are bullying you, and they don't even look at you. Whose brother is it?" If that guy hadn't suddenly called his brother over, even if there were so many of them, I, Uzumaki Koro, would have beaten them all to pieces today. Quote. The corner of Bai Mingyu's mouth twitched slightly, and he selectively ignored Xianglu's heroic declaration. When Naruto was beaten just now, he gritted his teeth and remained silent. Now that his opponents were gone, he had no intention of resisting. When the wound was rubbed with a handkerchief, he kept sucking air from his mouth and making a series of noises. He shouted, lightly, which made Xiangling so angry and funny that he couldn't help but poke his head hard with his index finger. Now that you know it hurts, why did you go there earlier? Really, you can still show off if you can't beat someone. It hurts, Sister Xianglin, please stop poking. Naruto held his head and hid for a few times, as if he suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at Bai Mingyu. To be precise, he looked at the Konoha forehead protector on his forehead. Brother Bai Yu, can you teach me ninjutsu? Okay, I want to become stronger so that they can't bully me casually, and my dream is to become Hokage. As long as I can become a ninja like you, brother, I will definitely be one step closer to Hokage. Naruto said with a burning gaze. Looking at Bai Mingyu, his eyes were filled with anticipation. It seemed that through Bai Mingyu, he could see his own image printed on the Hokage rock on the east side of the village. Faced with such a request, Bai Mingyu hesitated. He really didn't expect that Naruto would suddenly ask him to learn ninjutsu. If this request had been made by Yukarosu or Kimimaro, he wouldn't have to think too much and simply agree, but Naruto, considering his special status, he really couldn't respond to this request easily. The third Hokage probably isn't using binoculars to peek here now. And this kind of thing should not be considered a foul. After all, apart from revealing the truth about the Kyuubi incident and the death of the fourth Hokage to Naruto, which is absolutely forbidden, other things such as teaching a few basic ninjutsu should be considered very reasonable requests, regardless of whether you answer them or not. Agreeing is a normal reaction. Even if the third generation knew about it, there wouldn't be too much blame. Thinking of this, Bai Mingyu looked at Naruto. It's not impossible to teach you ninjutsu. Really? Naruto grinned, a strange look in his blue eyes. Bai Mingyu did not give him a chance to cheer. Instead, he looked directly into Naruto's eyes and said word for word, "But Naruto, there is one thing I think you should remember first. Becoming Hokage does not mean that you can get everyone. Only those who are recognized by everyone can become Hokage." This sentence was originally said by Itachi, who was reincarnated by the dirty soil during the Fourth Ninja War, but now Bai Mingyu told Naruto in advance. At the same time, Hokage building office. It's not that being Hokage can gain everyone's approval, but only those who are recognized by everyone can be Hokage. The third generation sitting behind the desk looked at the picture displayed by the crystal ball in front of him, his cloudy old eyes showing a bit of splendor. I didn't expect that this child would have such a profound understanding of the will of fire at such a young age. It really surprises me, but, it's a pity. The third generation shook his head and sighed with regret. It's a pity that he is a child from another village. If Bai Mingyu is a native of Konoha village, just such a sentence is enough to make the third generation look at him in a new light, and even after considering many aspects of his thoughts and qualifications, he will be trained as the mainstay of Konoha's future. It's not impossible, but no matter how much a child from a foreign village appreciates, there are some things that he is destined not to touch. Such as secret techniques, such as various S-level forbidden techniques recorded in the Book of Sealings. Only these, involving the foundation of Konoha village, must not be easily accessible to outsiders. Even among the ninjas in this village, only a few are allowed to have access to these things. It doesn't matter whether he has come into contact with the core secret technique of the village. With this child's qualifications and the ice escape blood inheritance limit, given time, he can grow to the height of a ninja. Let me take a good look at this ninja assessment mission. Do you have the value to be cultivated? The other side, the forest training ground outside Konoha village. After agreeing to Naruto to teach him ninjutsu, Bai Mingyu took him to the training ground. Xiangling and Kimimaro also followed. Anyway, these two little guys didn't have anything else to do, and they were also quite concerned about what Bai Mingyu said about cultivation. Xiangling, like Naruto, is interested in ninjutsu, while Kimimaro cares more about Bai Mingyu. Bai Mingyu didn't know what they thought, or even if he knew, he wouldn't care. In a corner of the training ground, he stopped. Here. Bai Mingyu found a stone and sat down. Naruto and Xiangling immediately came over and looked at him expectantly. Although Kimimaro was expressionless, his eyes couldn't stop drifting over here, and he was obviously a little agitated. Good look. How should I put it? The concept of ninjutsu is too broad, so let's start with the basics. The use of any ninjutsu is based on chakra. You should already have some understanding of the refining of chakra, right? Bai Mingyu pondered for a while and then said, "Well, Master Taohua taught me." Xiangling nodded, intertwined his hands, and made several hand seals. Then this is the sealing action, this is the seal of the tiger, this is the seal of the sea, these masters have taught me. Bai Mingyu nodded secretly. He could feel that the chakra extracted from the fragrant phosphorus was very pure, and the gestures of the seals were also precise. It seemed that he had received formal education. It seemed that Senju Momo was really dedicated when teaching her. Try your best and wait a few years to officially enter the ninja school. At least the basics will not be much different from those children who come from big families and have received family enlightenment education since childhood. Did you see that, Naruto? Bai Mingyu looked at Naruto. The method of refining chakra is roughly like this, but for different people, the refining speed is faster or slower. This is not a question of good qualifications, but the difference in each person's physique. Some people are born with difficulty refining chakra. Masters like Kai and Shaoli have typical physiques with difficulty in refining chakra. Bai Mingyu knew that Naruto had the nine tails sealed in his body, so he would be interfered by the nine tails chakra when using ninjutsu, but he didn't know if he would be affected by this when refining the chakra. Saying this in advance was also to avoid Naruto's self-confidence being hit due to his delay in refining chakra. Then, Naruto scratched his head and laughed a few times in embarrassment. Brother Baiyu, Sister Xiangling, I still don't quite understand how this Chidora is refined, can you tell me again? Kimimaro, what about you, do you understand? Bai Mingyu turned to look at Kimimaro. The latter hesitated for a moment, his expression seemed a little uncertain, and he slowly put the fingers of his hands together to form a hand seal for refining chakra. I'm not sure, but the general feeling, it should be this way. As he spoke, a faint wave of energy came from Kimimaro's hand. Although there is only a very small trace, it is clearly the chakra that has just been extracted. Bai Mingyu. Interesting to say. Although Kimimaro's strength is pretty good, and he has strength comparable to shinobi at a young age, he actually does not understand the method of refining chakra. Even if it is a taijutsu, he is from Nojiko, so far, more he still relies on the Kagaya clan's outstanding physique and reaction speed, as well as the instinct of the corpse veins to fight. Thinking about his previous experiences in Kurigakure village, he knew that the members of the Kagaya clan did not have the patience to teach him these common sense things. Even so, there is no denying that he is a genius. Just listening to Bai Mingyu's words, he was able to extract a very small amount of chakra. This talent is even worse than Itachi and Kakashi, and it is definitely a top-notch talent among ordinary ninjas. Even Bai Mingyu himself spent several hours successfully refining chakra when he was studying in the ninja school. Sure enough, it's hard to give you an intuitive understanding simply by talking about theory. Bai Mingyu stood up and walked to Naruto. When the latter looked at him with doubts, he spread his palms and gently pressed Naruto's back. In that case, use your body to feel it carefully. Don't talk and feel it with your heart. As he spoke, a soft chakra condensed in Bai Mingyu's palm and slowly spread into Naruto's body. It circled inside him and disappeared in just a few seconds. The movement of chakra in the body is almost like this. Feel it carefully. After you successfully refine the chakra, I will teach you new ninjutsu. After all, the ninjutsu that Bai Mingyu can teach Naruto is actually only basic ninjutsu such as the three body techniques. In the original book, Naruto's signature ninjutsu, the multiple shadow clone technique, is an A-level forbidden technique recorded in the Book of Sealings. Bai Mingyu does not know it, and the Rasengan is based on the principles revealed when Naruto studied with Jiraiya. If you practice and practice methods, and spend more time researching, you will still have a higher chance of figuring it out. But even after he figured it out, he didn't dare to use it in Konoha village. After all, this move was developed by the 4th Hokage. Apart from the 4th Hokage, only a few people such as Jiraiya and Kakashi can use it. Once it is discovered by others, it will be impossible to explain it. As for the attribute escape technique, Naruto has a single wind attribute chakra, and the wind attribute is Baimingyu's weakness. Although the power of wind escape ninjutsu can be developed through acquired training, it still requires long-term efforts. So looking at it this way, he really has nothing to teach. Speaking of, do you want to try teaching Naruto the 6th marine style? This thought flashed through Baimingyu's mind. To be honest, the taijutsu talents of the Uzumaki clan members are generally not bad. Needless to say, the two pure-blooded Uzumaki clan members, Koso and Kushina, the tactics used by Naruto in the early battles in the original book are mostly based on shadow. The clones are mainly combined with taijutsu. With the addition of the Uzumaki bloodline and the identity of the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, Naruto's physique is no less than that of Kai in his youth, and his resilience is far superior to the former. Given time, it is not impossible to master the 6th form of the Navy. After picturing in his mind the scene of Naruto beating Sasuke with the 6th marine style in the ninja school, Baimingyu was inexplicably looking forward to it. You can practice here now, Shang Phosphorus. You can watch them and call me if something goes wrong. After giving instructions, Baimingyu walked deeper into the forest. He stopped again a few hundred meters away and took out a long knife from his back. It's not Soda Shirayuki, it's just an ordinary long sword. So the move he plans to practice next is not Ice Escape, but the new move he got in the Kingdom of Water not long ago, the 3 sword skills recorded in the secret scroll of sword skills. With my current level of swordsmanship, I can only use the first sword move, Dragon Nest Flash, but first. There are indeed only 3 sword moves recorded in the secret scroll, but there is actually one hidden sword move, which is also the most powerful, speedy sword drawing technique, of Faden Yukin style. Although the function is simply to draw the sword, it is the basis of all attack moves. It cannot be emphasized enough, it is amazing. Let's try it first. Baimingyu took a deep breath, calmed his mind, and held one hand on the handle of the knife. Just in an instant, in the blink of an eye, a wisp of cold light burst out from Baimingyu's hand, as if a silver bottle had been broken, and spread out in all directions like a wave of water. After experiencing an extremely brief dazzling period, it quickly converged. In front of Baimingyu, a small tree as thick as a bowl swayed slightly, and then slowly broke apart from the middle. The half of the tree slid down smoothly to the side together with the crown, and the exposed cut was as smooth as a mirror. This kind of effect can no longer be achieved by ordinary slashing attacks. Is it really the super speed sword drawing technique? It feels like there is room for further acceleration. According to Baimingyu's estimate, the speed of the sword draw just now was about 2 to 3 times faster than his normal sword swing. However, judging from the feeling, there is still room for further progress. If it can reach 4 times or 8 times, doubling or even 16 times the speed can be regarded as the true meaning of divine speed. As for Dragon's Nest Flash, it is a random attack technique based on the rapid drawing of a sword. In an instant, he swings a dozen knives at the opponent in succession. Whether facing a single enemy or a group of opponents, it can have a very good attack effect. In 2 days, please call Sister Quan and Shion over to practice together. Whether it is swordsmanship or ninjutsu, you can master them faster only in actual combat. By the way, I can also take this opportunity to ask Kazuki Yugao about Konoha-style swordsmanship. Is it necessary to learn its swordsmanship moves? It is always good to master some skills with swords. Uazuki Yugao, who was born in a ninja family, has nothing else to do. He said that at least Baimingyu had a much more solid foundation and should be able to provide him with a lot of guidance. In addition, Baimingyu already has some clues about the further development of Soda Shirayuki's abilities. I also want to discuss genjutsu with Quan. The first time in the Kingdom of Waves, Baimingyu was tricked by an illusion and almost died. It seemed that he would not be able to do some special training without targeting it. Time flies. After returning from the Kingdom of Water, a week has passed in the blink of an eye. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.